At an early meeting downstairs, and it just wrapped up. I do want to take a second and recognize our fine arts performers from West Middle School under the direction of the incomparable Julie Swope. We have Rowan Mitchell, Yuvia Boyle, Alyssa Hariko, Tristan Hansen, Uriah Campbell, Gavin Hinson, Mahogany Patterson, Natalie Hugler, Lee Parzich, Amani Kellyhan, Ojali Adejo, Kadek Sutton, November Ridgway, Uriah Campbell, Juntine Watkins, Kobe Ballinger, Isabella Penny, Jamie Jones, and Wyatt Waldrop, and Ayana Williams. Okay, thank you again, West Middle School Fine Arts performers. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the agenda has been adopted. This month, our equity statement will be read by Mr. Willoughby.
Columbia Public Schools, through action in partnership with families and community, will uphold the values, policies, and practices that promote cultural competence. We will accept, embrace, and empower students and staff in their individual identities to establish and sustain human dignity, justice, and equitable treatment and inclusiveness in the classroom and workspace.
Thank you, Mr. Willoughby. I will move on to special recognition. Will Dr. Porter please come up and help us with that?
Good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome Battle Athletic Director Sammy Simmons and Battle Principal Dr. Allie Galbraith for the first special recognition.
Good evening. My name is Samantha Simmons, and I'm the athletic director at Battle High School. Tonight, I'm joined by Macy Hansen and her family, her coach, Taylor Biersa, our extracurriculars activities secretary, Hannah Hannikin, and our principal, Allie Galbraith. Tonight, we have the honor of recognizing Battle High School senior Macy Hansen on her performance at the Class 2 State Swim and Dive Championships. At this meet, Macy Hansen started the weekend by shattering the state record in the 500-yard freestyle. She swam this race in 4 minutes, 50.71 seconds, shaving off 4 seconds from the previous state record. In addition, Macy set a school record in the 200-yard freestyle with a time of 1:50.89. Her preliminary performance allowed her to continue to the final rounds of the state championships the next day. In her performances the next day, she rebroke her school record in the 200-yard, and in addition, she became the state champion of the 500-yard freestyle, finishing 9 seconds before any other swimmer. Macy's accomplishments extend beyond the pool, and we are grateful for the legacy she has left at Battle High School. Congratulations, Macy.
Thank you, Macy and Miss Simmons. Next, it's my honor to ask Miss Mary Groupie to come up with Luke and Hank and her entourage. I never know who it's going to be.
Good evening, you all. Thank you for having us. It is with immense pride and joy I stand before you today to present our 2 state champions from Hickman High School's wrestling team. Junior, Hank Banter, and freshman, Luke Hayden. These 2 athletes have led our wrestling team to the 4th place finish at the state tournament, marking the highest ranking for our team in 86 years. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. At the forefront of this achievement stands a team leader, Hank here. Hank's dedication, skill, and unwavering determination has propelled him to become a 3-time state champion. This season alone, he went undefeated with a record of 47-0 and an overall high school career record of 140-1. Hank is a 2-time NWCA All-American who has committed to wrestling at Mizzou in college. His dominance on the mat is truly unparalleled. But his contributions to our school and his community extend far beyond his athletic achievements. He's not only a stellar athlete, he's also a straight-A student who embodies the value of hard work, discipline, and integrity that we in the Hickman Wrestling Program strives to instill in all their students. He earned academic all-state first-team recognition twice and has over a 4.2 GPA. As a leader, both on the wrestling team and throughout our school, he sets a shining example for his peers, demonstrating what it means to be a CUPE. Thank you for that. Luke is a freshman and has already made an indelible mark on capturing a state championship title in his debut season while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. In this remarkable display of talent, determination, and skill, Luke faced off against seasoned competitors, including beating a senior in the championship bout. His victory not only showcased his remarkable athleticism, but also his poise under pressure and his unwavering commitment to excellence. Finishing his freshman season with an outstanding record of 46-3. His dedication to his craft and his tireless work ethic, he was at football practice before this, just for the record, have propelled him to the pinnacle of high school wrestling success already. His accomplishment at such a young age are a testament to his exceptional talent and promise for a bright future in this sport. We look forward to witnessing your continual success and contributions to Hickman and our wrestling program in the years to come. Before I say congratulations to them, I want to just point out our coaches. We have an incredible coaching staff here at the Hickman wrestling team. To say that they take this seriously and it is a lifestyle would be an understatement. They demand the best from themselves and the people around them, and this is some 2 shining examples of what happens. Thank you, Coach. So congratulations to Hank, to Luke, to our whole coaching staff, and to the Hickman community for this historic accomplishment. We are very proud to call you CUPEs. Thank you very much.
We will not ask for a wrestling demonstration, but I almost wanted to.
That could be your pregame show.
All right, we'll turn it over to Staff of the Month.
That's me again.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Hello again. We are excited to recognize and celebrate the outstanding educators within Columbia Public Schools, acknowledging their dedication, excellence in teaching, and commitment to fostering positive relationships within the school community. These are teachers who show appreciation for our kids, and we want to show them appreciation for their hard work and contributions. We celebrate their achievements. They serve as our inspiration, encouraging continued excellence and dedication within the teaching profession. May I please introduce to you our Teachers of the Month. First, we have Karen Bostrom-Gregg from Parents as Teachers. Amanda Kincaid from Cedar Ridge Elementary. Samantha Kaiser, Derby Ridge Elementary. Dr. Danielle Johnson was nominated from Rockbridge High School, but she is all 3 high schools, Hickman, Battle, and Rockbridge. And from Douglas High School, Trina Warder.
Congratulations again to all of our awesome staff of the month and to all of our awesome staff, whether they were recognized this month or not. We'll next hear from Dr. Holtz with our substitute of the month.
Good evening. The administration is pleased to recognize 2 EduStaff substitutes as substitutes of the month. Substitutes are nominated by CPS employees. The following will be recognized. First is Emma Burton. Emma joined the EduStaff team in January 2023. She has done outstanding work this year in 2 long-term teacher positions at Jefferson Middle School this school year and has gone on to become one of their assigned building substitutes this semester. Ms. Burton has received a glowing nomination from Cassidy Uri, a teacher at Jeff Middle School, noting, "Teachers know that if Emma is their sub, then the lessons will be taught and their students will learn. She holds the students accountable and sets high expectations. Students love Ms. Burton, and teachers do too." She praised the positive impact of Emma dutifully carrying the full teacher workload in her absence, saying, "She will forever be grateful for all she did for me and for my students." Next is Christopher Porter. Christopher, a coach from CPS, joined the EduStaff team in Columbia in the fall of 2022. He has been making a tremendous impact in the district, and more so since he became a billing substitute at Derby Ridge Elementary this school year. Nominations were received from all areas of the school, praising Mr. Porter for building relationships with all students, including those with significant learning disabilities. Teachers see him leading by example, praising how he goes above and beyond to help staff and students, that he is always ready and is reliable, consistent, cooperative, and caring for the needs of our students. They see him putting the needs of the school above everything else, and as one Derby teacher, Sonny Williams, stated, "Coach Porter has been a rock all year for our kids. He is someone my students look forward to seeing, and I know I can depend on him if I'm out. He's outstanding."
Thank you to our hardworking subs. Dr. Yearwood is next to speak about this ragtag board. Let's see what he has to say.
Oh, yes. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Get to talk about, no, I was just kidding. Good evening, President Waters, Board of Education. In honor of School Board Appreciation Month, I would like to express my deepest appreciation and gratitude to all the members of our school board. Your tireless efforts, dedication, and commitment to providing quality education to our children are a gift to our schools and our community. As a community, we entrust you with one of the most critical responsibilities in society, shaping the minds of the next generation. You do this with great skill, care, and expertise, ensuring every scholar receives the best education possible, regardless of their background, circumstances, or abilities. Your unwavering commitment to public education has been the driving force behind many significant improvements in our schools. For championing our achievement work to innovative learning opportunities to our high-quality facilities. As a board, you strive to focus on establishing policies, governance, and budgets that support inclusive, welcoming, and supportive environments to nurture our scholars' academic and personal growth. As volunteers, we appreciate the countless hours you spend attending meetings, reviewing policies, and making difficult decisions that impact the lives of our children. Your willingness to listen, to engage, and to collaborate with all stakeholders, including parents, teachers, administrators, and scholars, is a testament to your dedication to public service. In fact, you spend many hours of time learning and growing as leaders to be the best possible board members for our school district. And most recently, our board president, Suzette Waters, achieved her advanced certification in board leadership from the Missouri Schools Boards Association. Congratulations, President Waters. Let's give her a round of applause with that. Thank you. Okay. She joins board member Blake Willoughby, who earned distinguished status just a year ago. Let's give him a round of applause, please. Several of you are also approaching this accomplishment with just a few more hours to complete. With 6 members in their first terms, accomplishing this higher level of leadership development is a testament to your dedication and belief in the value of modeling governance as a public entity. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your unwavering commitment, even in difficult times, to providing high-quality education to our children. Your dedication, your hard work, your sacrifice are truly inspiring. And I know that your efforts now and in the future will continue to make a positive impact on our community for years to come. We want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's give them a round of applause, please.
Well, that was very nice. We are happy to do the work. We believe in it, and that's why we're doing it, I would say. Next, we'll move on to public comment. We have one community member signed up for public comment. So I'll read an abbreviated script and just say that patrons who did not register in advance are still welcome to leave a comment by filling out a form and putting it in the blue box at the back. Public comment will be 3 minutes apiece, and we will first and last and only hear from Ms. Kristen Bowen giving general public comment.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Yearwood, and members of the cabinet. Thank you so much for hearing my comment today. My name is Kristen Bowen, and I am the current president of Hickman High School PTSA. I'm here speaking on behalf of our group to share highlights from a powerful presentation and a discussion that we hosted at our March meeting on the subject of cell phone policy and how it's being reconsidered at Hickman. Our PTSA was eager to learn more about this issue, one that affects engagement, achievement, and the mental health of our students. One of our outstanding teachers, Ellen Wilson, presented at our meeting. Ms. Wilson was elected to Hickman's Leadership Council, and she's been key to the effort among faculty to consider the challenges of cell phone management and to formulate some recommendations. So Ms. Wilson began by reporting on what classroom teachers are experiencing, which is that current policy, which calls for cell phones to be put away, is practically speaking unenforceable. Further, we heard that this is a problem that is unlike and more pervasive than any other classroom management issue. So we learned about a study that was done with Hickman core classes, which looked into how many kids had phones out or on their desks during instruction, how many students had some sort of headphones on. And we heard that some 40 to 70% of students were on their phones during teacher instructional time. We also learned about the reading and research that Ms. Wilson's doing, and of particular interest to me were stories that she shared from talking with schools in other Missouri districts, from Southern Boone to Moberly and some others. She emphasized that in articles about districts who have been successful and in her conversations with other districts, one important finding is that a key to success is a universal policy that's enforced by the administration and the district. So at schools who are implementing new policies and introducing new norms to reduce classroom phone use, we did hear about a really difficult 2 to 4 week period of transition where students and everyone adapt to a new norm. But an equally important and powerful takeaway for me from this meeting was the response that we saw among teachers, parents, and students at our meeting. The questions that were raised by student government and PTSA volunteers varied widely. Everyone seemed to have a firsthand understanding of the issues around distraction in our classrooms. And our discussion touched on both important issues related to practicalities, but also policy. It's suffice to say, our school community has a lot of thoughts about cell phone use, but the one unifying thing in the conversation was the recognition that everyone sees the need for district-wide action. It was overwhelmingly clear our Hickman school community is very eager to begin tackling this huge issue for our classrooms. More than one parent raised the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bowen. We appreciate your comment. We don't clap before or after comments, and we also don't boo. So just to be consistent, we don't throw lettuce or anything. We will move on to the Scholar Voice section of our meeting. We have 3 students from Avid coming to address us. We have Xavion Holman from Alpha Heart Elementary, a 5th grader. We have Rowan Mitchell, an 8th grader from West Middle School, and Tina Green, a 10th grader from Battle High School. You can clap for kids.
Good evening. My name is Xavion Holman. I am a 5th grade student at Alpha Heart Lewis Elementary. We are the proud home of the Trustee Huskies and the only Avid elementary school in Columbia. Avid at the elementary level has some similar qualities to middle and high schools, but can look different in other ways. At Alpha Heart Lewis, we have Avid binders that go home with us weekly. Our Avid binders have dividers in them and hold a lot of schoolwork. We have a place to write reminders about upcoming events like our Multicultural Day. There is a place where communication about things like picture days gets put for our families to see. There's also a tab where we keep our own data about things like attendance because it's important to come to school. Each week we have an Avid lesson that teaches us about Wicker. Wicker stands for writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading. We use these strategies in classrooms. For example, Miss Egbert had us use a graphic organizer to write about our animal projects. It helped us get our thoughts organized on paper. Miss Hall uses inquiry strategies to help us learn math in different ways because one way doesn't always work for everyone. You may seen the work in our Avid binders if you attended Avid Academy in the fall. We love Avid Academy because it is a fun way to show our hard work to the community. We also got to map out our plans for the future. When I leave Alpha Hart Lewis Elementary, I will attend West Middle School and Hickman High School. After I graduate, I plan to attend the University of Missouri in Columbia. I want to be an artist. Thank you for allowing me to share what Avid looks like at Alpha Hart Lewis Elementary.
Hello there, Columbia Public Schools Board of Education. I am honored to be here today to talk about something that's really important to me. Avid. Adjust the mic. I am Roan Mitchell, an 8th grade student at West Middle School. My Avid teacher is Miss Bailey. And this is why Avid is important. When I was in 6th grade, I had to choose between a slew of electives for my 7th grade year. Band, choir, theater, computer, Spanish, and Avid. The reason I chose Avid as one of my 2 electives is because I knew Avid would be important to my future success, and it has. I have been in Avid since the beginning of 7th grade. Avid has encouraged me to stay organized and stay focused on earning high marks in all of my classes, including high school Algebra 1. Avid skills like tutorial request forms and note-taking have helped me better understand the topics in my core classes, band, and even extracurricular activities like theater and choir. Avid has also encouraged me to pursue a career in education. Someday I hope to be a music teacher. I would like to complete a master's program with a degree in fine arts education and teach as a middle school band or theater teacher. With the encouragement of my Avid teachers, Miss Bailey and last year Miss Ward, I am taking all advanced classes, and I will be taking all honors classes in high school. I am playing the Prince in this year's production of Stepsisters the Musical. Hey, April 19th, 20th, and 21st at 7 p.m., 7 p.m., and 7 p.m. at 2 p.m. at the West Middle School gym if you're interested. I was one of 5 West Middle School students chosen to perform in the Northeast Missouri Junior High Honors Band. I was the West Middle School Geography B finalist, District Award Band Clarinet second chair, and currently one of 3 West Middle School students chosen to play in the district-wide honors jazz band, along with the fact that I'm in the Columbia Youth Choir. But that's just this year. I've also won the West Middle School Geography B. I also won it, and played Charlie Bucket in the school musical Willy Wonka. I've done solos at adult band/choir concerts, and so much more. Avid has helped me organize my schedule and allow me to do all of these things. In short, Avid has helped me to be a better student and have more confidence in myself and my abilities as a student, actor, and musician. Avid has also helped me to stay organized both physically and in regards to my schedule. I am so glad I was able to be here today to tell you why I believe Avid is important.
Family, community, and preparedness. 3 words that don't mean the same thing, but all simultaneously mean Avid to me. My name is Tina Green, and I'm a sophomore at Battle High School. I participate in the activities speech and debate, track and field, and cheer. I've been in the Avid elective since I was in 7th grade at Lane Middle School. While middle school Avid prepared me a lot for high school, I don't think anything will ever compare to the support and joy I've received from Avid at Battle High School with my teacher and coordinator, Miss Flippin. While the start of my high school career was rocky, it's only ever looked up within the Avid elective. Avid is a family, and the people within my class have become some of my best friends. We are all united in our desire to not only go to college after graduation, but to achieve great things afterwards. This class has provided me with the resources to attain my goals and prepared me for college more than I ever thought possible. I've improved my skills in problem solving, organization, and focused note-taking, while also being provided support with my other classes or even personal issues if need be. This support doesn't just come from my teacher or the class content itself, but also from my classmates who have grown with me. The Avid focused note-taking process and tutorials have been some of the most helpful skills we've learned. Note-taking skills allow me to feel confident that I can take notes in any class, no matter how long or difficult the block may be. In tutorials, we problem solve the points of confusion that may come up in the AP and honors courses we take. Despite how challenging these classes can be, I have found success using Avid strategies and being able to lean on my Avid family. We've learned how to study in groups like we'll one day do in college and to lift each other up when we are struggling academically. This experience doesn't happen in every class, and that's what makes Avid special. Through Avid, we have the opportunity to explore different careers and college opportunities. Our Avid class takes into account things like our college and career goals, our dreams of playing sports in college, and reminds us of the future we are building with every action we take. Personally, I want to run track in college and continue my education as far as law school with the dream of becoming an attorney. Ms. Flippin knows this, and through our Avid class works to help me and my classmates understand continuing our education farther than our bachelor's degree. Avid has clearly impacted me as a person and helped me to become the best student I can be. And I know how important this elective is to hundreds of students within the Columbia Public School District, just like me. Thank you for your time.
Does anyone have any questions about Avid? Dr. Porter, do you want to just give like a brief, just in case people don't know, like what the purpose of Avid is at the district level? Because we heard great
President
stories.
Waters, I don't want to, but I want to introduce my great friend Shanna Dale, and she is the Avid coordinator, and she will be much more expressive about the topic. I also told her she wasn't talking tonight, so. Sorry, Shanna.
You did promise that. Hi, good evening. My name is Shanna Dale, and this is year 11 for Avid throughout the district. First, I just want to say thank you to these really impressive young people today. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Yes. So, Avid is a college and career readiness system. It is a not-for-profit organization that we partner with as a district. It's been around for about 50 years. It's kind of two-part. We have an Avid elective class, which all three of these young people are part of. It's a little different in elementary, whereas it's more of if you're in an Avid elementary, then you're an Avid kiddo. When they become a middle school student or a high school student, they have to apply to be in the Avid elective class. We're looking for kids that meet kind of a certain focus. There's a lot of details there. If you want to know more, you can email me about that, and I can get into some details. The other piece about Avid is that we're here to support all teachers and all students, and we do that through Avid school-wide. So we're focusing on developing and improving instructional strategies throughout our buildings, because if it's good for Avid kiddos, it's good for all kiddos. I know that I think some principals that have been here and have probably left, but they're focusing on maybe focused note-taking is going to be a focus school-wide, because if kids are sitting in a class and there's information happening, they're hearing it, they should probably be writing it down. If they're interacting with their notes, they're going to be more likely to retain that information. That's just one very brief, simple example of an Avid school-wide strategy. Let's see, what questions may you have for me?
And Avid stands for?
Oh, that's a good one. Advancement via individual determination. Yeah. Thank you for your support of Avid. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you to our scholars again. That was very brave of all of these students to come up and talk about their experience. We appreciate it. Next, we will hear from CMNEA President Noel Gilzo, followed by CMSTA President Carrie Stith.
Good evening. I am Noel Gilzo, President of CMNEA, the exclusive teacher bargaining representative for Columbia Public Schools. We are happy to report a relatively smooth bargaining process, but at about halfway through our sessions, there is still work to be done. We look forward to working out an agreement on compensation that improves the district's ability to recruit and retain high-quality teachers, a stated CSIP goal. When we surveyed the teacher unit, several priorities were abundantly clear. Number one, 93% believed competitive compensation was the most important issue for recruitment and retention. In fact, 80% believed that salaries are not appropriate considering their years of experience and/or levels of education. And 91% strongly agreed that yearly steps and competitive salary schedules are essential to retaining quality educators. When asked if teachers had considered leaving the district to seek higher compensation elsewhere in the last 5 years, 64% reported yes, they had. On the heels of news that St. Louis schools will offer 17% raises this year, we hope extra consideration will be given to our ask for about 5% for each of the next 3 years. Number two, 78% feel protection of teacher plan time is crucial for effective instruction, student feedback, and communication with families. Lately, teachers have felt that excessive meetings have eaten into their plan time, including additional coaching requirements for teachers whose students have not demonstrated sufficient growth on iReady or MAP assessments. While assessment data can inform instruction, using effect size data to evaluate teacher performance without a consistent algorithm for determining it is putting the cart before the horse. Once a consistent and viable method for determining the effect size is determined, input should be solicited from teachers about how to use the data to improve instruction. They are the experts. In some cases, additional PD or support might be necessary, but it is never a one-size-fits-all solution, since there are so many factors that impact student performance, many of which are outside teacher control. Number three, 73% report that safety and security are priorities. Given that 51% report that class sizes exceed DESE desirable class size standards, and that 88% report that extra support is not provided when class sizes exceed DESE desirable class size standards, teachers are concerned about escalated behaviors under these conditions. Teachers report that disruptive behaviors from students inhibit them from performing their job duties. 47% say very often, which we said on the survey meant more than once per week. And 24% said often, which equates to once per week on average. Tonight, I want to end by thanking Karen Hayes for her service as an interim member of the CPS School Board. She has been a quick learner and fully engaged in the processes and committee meetings of this body. She clearly has had the best intentions for the students, staff, and families of CPS. Thank you, Karen, for your dedicated work these last few months. Your efforts are greatly appreciated. And to all of you, happy School Board Appreciation Month. As always, I appreciate the opportunity to address the board on behalf of the more than 720 members of CMNEA. Thank you for your service.
Good evening. I am Carrie Stith, President of CMSTA. I am proud to represent CMSTA and its members who support a collaborative working relationship between teachers, support staff, administration, and board. We would like to start with some celebrations. Elementary and middle school teachers have been working endlessly to make contact with all families during parent-teacher conferences. This is an imperative partnership that supports scholars through their entire school career. Our goal is always to have 100% attendance by in-person, phone, or Zoom meetings. We continue to work towards this high expectation each and every conference. All elementary buildings welcomed the class of 2035. That made me feel really old, by the way. last week with kindergarten roundup because my grandson's registered for kindergarten. I'm fine. Most buildings were able to enroll students, give tours, and provide information about summer school. We look forward to welcoming all of our new scholars in the fall. Happy Board Appreciation Month. This year, CMSTA is making a $150 donation to the Columbia Public School Foundation in your honor. Thank you for all that you do for our teachers, students, and community. I will use a quote from one of the students from one of your many school visits. You do a lot. You should get paid. It's not fair that you don't. Thank you for ensuring CPS continues to grow and be CPS best. Legislation Day is soon approaching for CMSTA. The Northeast region will have representation at the Capitol on March 26th. This allows teachers the opportunity to advocate for our scholars and support legislation that allows us to be the educators that we are. We are looking forward to sharing our support, especially of a bill, House Bill 1851, that would dramatically overhaul the current state assessment system by requiring the State Board of Education to make the system more student-friendly. The Missouri State Teachers Association surveyed its members on the state of profession in January and February of 2024. More than 2,300 members responded, including non-certified members, teachers, administrators, and retired members. MSTA is the largest teacher organization in the state of Missouri. Low salaries are one of the highest concerns. It leaves educators struggling financially or working multiple jobs. Low pay relative to the required qualifications and responsibilities, as well as stress, are driving many teachers out of the profession. Student behavior and mental health issues are creating very difficult teaching and learning conditions. Trauma, poverty, lack of accountability, and unmet basic needs are cited as root causes. Administrators are not backing up teachers on discipline issues, adding additional stress, and undermining learning environments. Many respondents felt unsupported. Standardized testing and increased mandates from the state are hurting meaningful recruitment and retention efforts. Educators feel standardized test scores don't reflect actual learning, and the additional mandates from the legislation and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education take away from instruction time. There is also a need for increased parental and community involvement. I know that this can be discouraging to hear, but we know that this is all districts across the state. This is not something that you've not heard before. We want to thank you for always thanking our teachers and trying your hardest to support initiatives that will improve these concerns with our CPS teachers. We would like to take this time again to thank you for all that you have done for our students, teachers, and stakeholders every day. Many teachers have shared with me that you have taken the time to talk to teachers, visit classrooms all this year. The many hours that you put in reading and answering emails that take time away from your own families is greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Presidents Gilzo and Stith, and thank you especially for the donation to the Columbia Public Schools Foundation. That's a nice thing, and I know they will use the money well. We will move on to our facilities and attendance area update with Mr. Randy Gooch.
On technology here. That's fine. right. I got two topics tonight. First of all, since this is the first one up, and let me make it full screen. There we are. We'll start with the attendance area issue. Just to give you kind of an update, the work is ongoing. Last week was a pretty busy week for us. We had our consultant in, met with some groups, started really talking about some things. And out of that is a couple things I'll share with you here in just one moment. Just to refresh your memory, this is kind of the path of the overall plan. We're kind of in that boundary work session and community engagement, a combination of that. We had the listening sessions. We're working through what the feedback was on that. And we're also really starting to dig in on where do we start drawing some boundary lines. Just to give you a heads up with the remaining timeline, so we will have exact dates for you probably by the end of this week. We've got a few scheduling issues, but we'll get that and we'll get all this published and on the website. 1st of April, we'll have a listening session at Russell Elementary, the media center there. It will be a come and go type event. It'll be a span of probably 3 or 4 hours, and anybody that's likely to be affected in that phase 1 is welcome to come. We'd really like to have you all out, and anybody else as well, but that will be kind of that focus. Remember, the phase 1 is kind of to fill in some of the new capacity that's coming on board at Russell, and that will be a very small amount of families and students involved in that. So a little bit smaller. Either the 18th of April or May 13th, we'll be bringing that first phase for approval for you all to consider. And then moving on a little bit deeper into May, we have phase 2 and phase 3 open houses. And those will be multiple meetings. We plan to have one in each of the comprehensive high schools, and then we will have 3 others, so there will be a 6. Those will all be come and go events with a wide timeline. Also at that same time, or actually a little bit before that, the online survey will be available, so we'll be able to start collecting data. Those are open to anybody. There is absolutely no restriction. We want anybody that wants to come and learn more to talk about it. We'll also start laying out some options and getting feedback specifically on options from our public. May 13th, we'll do a board update, and then we're going to be moving in. That will kind of give you guys a look and kind of a chance to give any of us, the internal committee or our consultants, some final guidance if you'd wish. And then we're going to work to do a final presentation, kind of a first read, if you will, a first look in June. And then your July board meeting would be the final approval of that. So that is our timeline that we're looking at. One thing that we did talk about in long-range planning with this update is a diversity index. Previously, the last time we did this, we really wanted to do this. But we were at the very end of the census data. New census had already happened, but the data was not out yet. So we didn't really think we could do that because a couple of elements in this index ride on census data, block data from the census. So we didn't. So we wanted to make sure we did it this time. Previously, we've always looked at, if we've got a boundary, we look at what's the percentage of free and reduced lunch. That's been kind of our only indicator of, affluence, poverty, that's it. But with this block data and the diversity index, it gives us 3 measurements to look at. Now, I do want to state this because I've been asked, are there any quotas that are being driven off this? Absolutely not. It's simply looking at our boundaries and trying to understand the students and the family of the students within those attendance areas. So this is what the diversity index entails. These three elements, this is all census data driven at a block level, which is a large enough block that it does not indicate any, we can't put a face or name to it, but yet small enough for boundary work to be able to look how things could be moved, rearranged, fall in different attendance areas. So these are the three things that will fall within the attendance area. Now, you're going to have probably a lot of questions on this. Hopefully not tonight, because I'm not really smart enough to do all the math on this, but our consultant Karen has put together a great tutorial video talking about how this comes into play, how it's kind of been used in other large districts across the nation. So we will make that available to the public on the website as well. And just a reminder, there's that kind of tentative timeline again. Any questions or comments at this point on this before we move into the next topic?
Ms. Brow, go ahead.
My only question is, do you have some guidance as to where it might be on the website when you get it put there? Just that's quick for people that are watching? Or maybe not.
Oh, Bombstar. I looked the other day. There is a thing that talks. It's just I believe over on the right side a white hot link that says boundaries.
Okay.
And then that goes into that, and then it's a launch page from all of that. So I think it's just one click, and then you're on the boundary page.
I think for people that are interested in that diversity index, it would be great for them to go watch that video when we do have it up, because she was at Long Range Planning last week and gave a really excellent explanation conversation about all of that.
Randy, what time is the open house at Russell on the 1st of April?
We're going to put this up. I don't have the final. We were still looking.
Evening?
I think we were looking at a 4 to 7
Okay.
time frame for the Russell.
Evening, but stay tuned.
Afternoon, evening.
And that'll be on the website also?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
very good.
Yes.
Ms. Snodgrass.
I know you noted that especially that April 1st session would be really good for people who might be affected. What guidance would you give to families who are trying to figure out if they might be affected?
Sure.
What would be something they could check?
We are planning to have a couple of options that we will put out so they can kind of look, so we kind of know what areas within that could be affected. So we'll have a couple options out prior to, and then we can get feedback from families on those particular options.
Mr. Willoughby.
So a few comments. On that same boundary web page, currently there is a link at the bottom that says Find My Attendance Area. If you click on that and then it takes you to another page, there's a screen that shows kind of like a GSI map. You can click that. It'll pull up a new web tab. You can type in your address. You can see if you're near the Russell Boulevard attendance area zone. And I would recommend, if you are near it, go ahead and attend this session, plan to attend this session so that you can hear information and go from that standpoint, just on that front. Also, I would say as we get closer to phase 2 and 3, doing a very similar thing just to look at where that is, we'll have more of the maps that are options there in those conversations.
And what we're on this phase 1, we think we're talking probably around 40 students. So we can, in either options or several options, so we can directly communicate and work through the school and their newsletter saying, hey, you might be affected in this area and that. So we can do that to make sure we get those that are going to be impacted in and be able to take a look and give feedback.
Yeah. I know that we got an email, and I'm this month's board responder. I read it. I just wasn't able to respond to it, asking around the diversity index. And I just wanted to highlight that I think one of the pieces, this is not a CPS created thing. This is a cooperative strategies, a tool that they created in partnership with other school districts as they were trying and working and have kind of brought this in that space. And one of the questions that was asked was feeling as if looking at degree attainment and creating how they create their labels on certain degree attainments being stigmatizing. And I think one thing just to share around I think the reasoning why cooperative strategies conducts how they code that is due to the fact of how research points to increased degree attainment is associated to higher levels of income. And so them utilizing that as a factor within it. So that's one element I just wanted to comment on. And then from a larger perspective of the diversity index, I would really encourage folks to go to our recordings of our board meetings and committee meetings and watch the most recent meeting that happened of long-range facilities planning. That was last Wednesday. Karen talked through that diversity index that was recorded. Yes, there isn't a presentation, but it was recorded. And so that's there. I am more than willing to talk through that if anyone has questions. Obviously, I'm the board responder, so you'll get me immediately this month. But in future months, feel free. It's B Willoughby, WILLOUGHBY, at cpsk12.org. Is that right? Is it a .org?
Yes.
Cool. Sorry, it's been 5 years. You get confused.
Tag, you're it.
Yeah, right. And then if emailing seems impersonal, phone number is 706-442-0530. Hey, that's already on the website. As the chair of long range, I know this is a really hard process. I've been through it on the board multiple times. And so truly, like if you have questions around how Cooperative Strategies is utilizing that tool, I'm more than willing to talk through how Karen has talked to us about it, how I've individually talked with her about it and gotten information. And truly, I understand that this is a difficult thing. And so here is a resource to really help as that chair of the committee.
Thanks, Blake. Mr. Willoughby. If I had one final question, is the board going to get any kind of summary of the focus group notes or discussion? Is there going to be any kind of summary provided to the board?
She is preparing a little bit more detailed than she had ready for the work session.
Okay.
But as soon as she compiles that, yeah, that will go up there as well.
Very good. Thank you.
General findings from.
Thank you.
All right, on to the next topic, long-range planning, master plan development. So this is also a presentation that is very similar to one I did back in November, and with a few updates, and particularly kind of talking to some questions that have arisen about some of the prioritization of capital projects. Now, the tough part of this, if this were next month, we would probably have those actually kind of through at least initial approval from us, what we're going to be recommending to you. But right now, so I got to keep a little bit of this cat in the bag, but I'll try to explain as we go. So just kind of look at this. This is kind of a 40-year path we're looking at when we talk about facility conditions. I talked about this last time. Also how this path kind of applies to our need for attendance areas. But we have been in really a mode for quite some time to eliminate trailers, expand capacity, and also manage growth. So it's been a tough path. As you know, you're familiar with this document. We share this a lot. This is the current long-range facility and bond plan, but as you can see up there, we're getting kind of close to we're in the last third of this page, so we have to start really looking and preparing. And some of this was prepared out here. If you look at the far right side, these were things that we were planning on prior to COVID, so I think it's good for us to kind of take a look. We know what's happened with construction prices since COVID, ongoing inflation in those areas, and a lot of things. So we've got more information to work for, but this is something that will be becoming a more updated document and projecting out further into the future. I talked to the long-range committee about this, what I think we really need to do. We have some major data points. We have current and historical budgeting. We know what we've spent over time. We've got that bond planning that we do to kind of educate the public. We also have facility conditions audits now. We have the complete set. That's about 7,000, 8,000 pages, depending on how you print that. So it is To say there's a lot of data, it would be a big understatement. So we have that. We also conducted a play area master plan to really modernize our play areas, put them into compliance with ADA considerations and that sort of thing. We have that plan together. We'll have the attendance area work that's kind of coming together. We'll know what those attendance areas are going to look like for the next several years. Technology is doing a lot to update their plans of how they're replenishing equipment as it ages out. And then another thing we would want to put in this, much like we did with the attendance areas, is before we get too deep in this process, is ask you as a board some of your priorities and some of the things that you would like for us to look at in building this master plan. So that, and then as that process goes, much like what we're doing with attendance areas, would also do listening sessions and some things, getting community and other stakeholder input on building this master plan. But however, that all said, to put all of that in the funnel and to come up with a cohesive plan, that's really not, that's not in the wheelhouse of anybody we employ in Columbia Public Schools. We're going to need help. That probably could come from our architect of record. That would be something that they could do. They have that expertise, so I think that would be the way to do that. At the end of that work, I think you would have something that would help you as a board, future boards, to look out into that 10, 15 year and really look how those bond projects need to line up in the future. Also, one thing that we talked a little bit about too is with the attendance areas, we have a little bit of leveling off of student population, which may not drive our need to build new as fast, which would be very good in this scenario because there is a significant amount of deferred maintenance that is accumulated over many years that we could then turn in and start doing some major remodels in some buildings that are definitely in need. Why we did those facility audits in the first place, this is kind of like a third-party test. You know, the testing that we do a lot of times academically is done by somebody else. This is kind of that, and it's also a common assessment. It gives us the ability to look at every building, one that might be 100 years old versus brand new, and being able to compare conditions. So it gives us a common assessment in all these areas. It derives two numbers. One is the Facility Condition Needs Index. That's the one I'll really kind of focus on tonight because that looks at all the costs that you're likely to incur with a building over a 10-year life cycle, with everything that's wrong with it now, what's anticipated. So it's the most anticipatory part of this formula. So if we rank our buildings by that score, the buildings that are in the left column all score above the 0.3 on that FCNI score. And what the experts tell us is that's something that's definitely in need for significant remodel. So that's kind of our hot buildings. Now that does not mean that there are not issues in other buildings, and that does not mean that on occasion things will emergent needs that need to take care of in some of those other buildings as well. So, but this is just a little bit of a guide. So, been asked, how do we prioritize the projects that we're considering? Well, for a long time, it's been kind of standard practice is we know we've got to take care of roofs. We know we got to do tuck pointing, got to have doors and windows. That keeps the elements out. When water comes into a building, it doesn't matter what kind of building it is, that's when bad things start happening. So that's most all the projects you see and we bring forward are in that category. then HVAC is a system, but it's a very high priority system because it's trying to keep the interior as healthy as possible. So we have the other thing then. So that's kind of just some categories in which we always look at. We want to keep that. But then we lay on the map or the lens of the facility condition audits. And what we've done so far, we've worked with facilities. They're in the buildings every day. We've identified between 13 and 15 projects that we're going to make recommendation for capital improvement funding. And these are all projects that are for those high scoring buildings, kind of our high flying column there. Some of those will be multiple projects that we will bundle. Sometimes we try to bundle projects so it's an economy of scale, and it minimizes the total length of disruption in a building or that sort of thing. So that's kind of our prioritization process. I'm going to run through these pretty quick. These are sheets, and these are, because this is all in the packets, you have it. But these are just some projects as of mid-year that we had completed in these high-need buildings. This is Fairview Elementary. So I want you to see that although there's still high needs, we have been doing things that are addressing issues in these high needs buildings. Oops, sorry. This is 2 Mile Prairie. Wow, it's going quick on me. Park. Field School, excuse me, not elementary. This is Hickman High School. West Middle School. New Haven Elementary. Rosetta Avenue. Benton Elementary. Columbia Career Center, and of course, that's undergoing a major renovation at the moment. So that's kind of some of the major projects that we've done in those high need buildings to this point. What are your questions?
Ms. Snodgrass.
Just to make sure I understood, the schools where you just showed in the projects that we've been working on.
Yeah.
Cheeto got caught in my throat. The index for those schools was calculated before those projects were done,
Yes.
and all of those are things that have been done since
Yes.
that
So
number
those
has been
indexes
calculated.
will come down some.
Okay.
Now,
Perfect.
honestly, those have not, other than the Career Center, that will be for small increments, but yes.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I understood
Yes.
that correctly.
Ms. Burrow.
Along with that, though I think I remember us talking at the November facilities meeting. We've done a lot of work, and you have those listed there, but not every one of those items was a result of the facilities audit.
No.
Correct? Yeah, most of them were.
Here's the reality. When you're looking at a district that has estimated $300 million plus in deferred maintenance, and if you're concentrating and putting projects in your most highly, or the ones that are deemed needing the most, there's not a lot that we couldn't do that is going to hit into some of that.
Right.
When we start having larger chunks, or if larger chunks of bond issues are dedicated to remodels, then when we have that to dig into and really to go deep. But it's right now, the dartboard's big enough.
We're going to hit something.
We're going to hit, and it will likely be enumerated in that, because those audits they're pretty much from ground all the way up and everything in them.
And they were done over a course of several years, because you couldn't do them all.
About a 3-year, right. We staged it out because it was fairly expensive, so we did stage it out. But we did do the majority of the older buildings first,
Right.
which identified many of those
Yes.
that are still in that column, and if you look at some of those projects, that's been over a 2 or 3 year process.
Yeah, I think Benton was the very first one that
Mhm.
was done. And this other question, I don't know if it's for you or for Heather, but
I think it's Heather. I'm just kidding.
the long-range facility and bond plan, I believe what you said is, this is a plan that's been in existence for a number of years. And so what we're seeing towards the end of it, where it says April of 2026 and April of 2028, we're at a point where we might not actually need a new high school, but we might want to use similar funds for, as you said, the deferred maintenance. Would we be in a position where we could potentially ask for more bond money in 2026 to address our maintenance issues?
You're deeply into Heather there.
Okay.
But but I will say this, that yes, though that last part of that bond plan, I think it would be wise to revisit those priorities, particularly after this master plan, and just really see if those still need to be in there. Because you look at that was done several years back, even prior now, still out of ways, but I think it would be a good measurement to line up against a new master plan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Randy, I just want, you said our architect on record. Who is that again? Just
As DLR.
Oh, yeah, DLR. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I thought that's what it was, but I just wanted to make sure that I was recognizing that correctly. And then just as a comment, I mean, I think this is one of those things as we've talked about as a board, right? Past boards, as we look at this long-range facility bond plan that was created over a decade ago, right? Looking at it, was really that focus on addressing our growth and building new buildings. And I think that's where this board and future boards, I would strongly recommend that we really have that focus in on, right? Our deferred maintenance, the buildings that we have now. We're at a space and a capacity where our bond questions and what we propose to our community can really be, as Randy's talking about, addressing those larger projects that do take a lot of money while using our small bit of the levy that is around routine maintenance on some of those smaller projects that we already do, right? We already do that right now, but we do need, that's where the addressing of our bond questions, I think, can go. And just for our community, that's probably why you might see future boards still propose bonds in the coming years, right? Because I think I know I've had questions about, like, we have these new buildings, y'all are seeing like a plateau, we won't see bonds being asked anymore. And it's like, oh, no. That will still probably be coming up because of these kind of things.
Yeah, thank you. Randy, or Mr. Gooch, I had a question about on slide 4, it says that the
Shut it down too quick.
the master plan process will be conducted by DLR no later than the May 24 work session.
Initiated.
Something like that. And then with staff and community input, but that you want the board's guiding principles. So what I'm getting at is just your vision of a timeline, and how do you want the board to give you our guiding principles? Because we're going to have to schedule that.
I would like to maybe put that into like the April work session and talk about some of those guiding principles you would want. I think that will be enough lead time to add that in. Because once we initiate that, a little of it will be them digesting all the data.
Okay.
So just FYI, we haven't engaged DLR at this point, and so it's not something that's budgeted in the current year budget. So if that's going to happen before the end of the year, we need to make sure that we have an engagement with them to perform those services. Otherwise, I was planning on it to be a one-time need for next school year's budget, so we can start prioritizing the spring, but the actual work probably would not start until after July 1.
Okay.
And the next bond issue for 2026 still should be the same, but it really needs to be the job of the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee in the next year to talk about how much money we're going to ask for, because really the amount of money that we're going to ask for really needs to be built around what projects we have done. So it's really important for the facilities committee and to get that information and to decide which jobs we're going to prioritize, and then we can work with our financial advisor, who happens to be here tonight, with Piper Sandler and company, to work on what funding then we can have available, and then the installments to be able to fit the needs of the actual projects that we want to have done.
And really, that engagement letter is kind of what I'm talking about in May. The engagement, it wouldn't commence until the new budget year.
Okay. But you still would probably need the board's
So if we
consensus
have your,
guiding
kind of
principles.
some of your insight and your guidance that you want to include
Okay.
in them looking, if we can do that at the April work session, then we can get that in
Okay.
that letter as well.
So we need to start just kind of personally brainstorming what our guiding principles might be, and then be prepared to share those at the April work session. Thank you. That's what I needed to know. Is that the conclusion of your?
That is my
okay,
conclusion.
Seeing no other questions, I will thank you very much for that update. That was good stuff. All of that, including the attendance area update. And next, we will have a CSIP update with Dr. Yearwood.
Yeah. What are we missing? What are we missing?
Looks like we have time for a wrestling demonstration still.
Raz was? No, I was kidding. Is this on? Is this off? No, it was on. There you go. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. All right. Here we are going to give an update about our district, CSIP, in terms of what we are looking at with our attendance and our discipline. Remember that we're moving towards inspiring greatness with intentionality this year. Inspiring greatness. And remember, how are we going to do this? Well, number one, by maintaining our vision. Everyone moving in the same direction, a school system to be the best school district in the state. How are we going to get to be the best in the state? By following our mission statement that says to provide an excellent education for all scholars. Beautiful words that I inherited when I came in, certainly believed in. The key part that I've just been focusing on with my teacher advisory groups and my leadership groups that we've been really discussing is how are we going to get to these two items, although they're beautiful words that are put up here for vision and mission. And that's by looking at our true values. What do we value as an organization? And, we had a robust discussion at our last meeting where we talked about these, and went very well. But I want to share this now, where we talk about, as an organization, to get us to where we're providing an excellent education for all, we must have trust. We must be able to trust each other. Organization splinters if there's no trust. Integrity. What do we do when no one's in the room, no one's watching, in those classrooms, in the building, in my office? True collaboration. Do we truly collaborate around the direction that we want our school district to go in? Is that a high priority for us to provide an excellent education for all scholars, all students? Transparency. Being able to say, hey, look, you know what? I don't get it. And like I told the group, there are times that there are things that I may not understand, things that I need further clarification on because I don't know certain things. And I will always seek help as far as being able to say, I need help to get to point A or point B. Empathy. Looking through the lens or the eyes of the other person and really trying to understand where they're coming from. And the last one, giving grace. What does that mean, to give grace? If we are wound up and we are centered on sort of, vengeance or centered on anger, there is no grace. But truly trying to embrace that factor of grace. And by grace, I mean being able to look at others' weaknesses, being able to look at others that need help, true help. And instead of ridiculing, really uplifting and inspiring as it goes on with our theme. So to be able to get our mission statement working, to get it to come off the page, to get it internalized as an organization, we must be able to embrace these values in our organization. We must be able to embrace these values that we have beautifully put up as an organization. So when we look at whether we are posting on social media, whether we're having conversations with each other, are we following these values that we say we hold dear as a school district, as Columbia Public School system? And unequivocally, my entire leadership, my teacher advisory groups, no one said, no, we shouldn't. No one said, we can't. No one said, you know what, Dr. Yearwood, throw these out. These mean nothing. So again, as I move forward, I will be, again, re-emphasizing these values that we say we're going to hold ourselves to as an organization. And I will keep saying that till we get it internalized, because when we internalize these, then we move to action. Then we say, okay, we've got to get some action going on this academic environment. We've got to be able to come together and say, we will raise this ship, this Columbia Public School ship, to places that we know it can go to together. But without that, without these values, it's just words on the paper. It means nothing. Would never be internalized. We spoke about this before. We have a system in place. We know how to get there. The roadmap is here for us. As all of these are intertwined, the vision, mission, along with our strategic plan, beautiful plan that has goals and focus areas, and then the actionable steps, the work to get us there, the milestones. We talked about our focus area this year, or areas. We talk about creating high expectations for all scholars. What does that mean? It means that accepting failure is not an option. Making sure that every scholar has what they need to be successful, moving on to the next level on into college, and making that commitment to that. Improving core instruction, looking at opportunities to grow, look at opportunities for professional development, looking at opportunities to add tools to the tool belt that allows us to become more professional in our craft of teaching. And lastly, our district's instructional framework that we're working on. If we can't have these, we're dead in the water. If we can't have that focus, we're dead in the water. We must be talking about it. We must be demonstrating it. It should be the life fabric of our organization. focusing on these areas. And our beautiful CSIP, or strategic plan as one calls it, or continuous school improvement plan according to DESE. Our goals: 90% of scholars will attend school at least 90% of the time by 26-27. The percent will increase by 5% each year beginning in 23-24. And we are pushing, and Ms. London will come talk to you about that. The second piece to this: the number of out-of-school suspensions decreasing by 50% by 26-27, with a 10% decrease every year. And of course, the number of teachers retained each school year will increase to approximately 90% by the 26-27 school year. So we know what we need to do. We have a roadmap. But if our value systems are broken, not going to happen. And that's what we're working on deliberately. That's what we've been talking about in our administrative meetings. How can we bring that to life? So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mrs. London, who will talk us through attendance.
Thank you, Dr. Yearwood. Good evening, board. So on your slide, it shows that we're at 80.2%, which is where we were as of March 1st. However, we've added a couple of tenths of a percent since then. So we are now, as of today, at 80.4%. We know that our minimum goal is 80% to get any points, but we are not going to be satisfied with the 80%. We're really, really pushing towards that 85%. And what we really are pushing for is to continue to show our public the correlation directly between being in seat and the increase in those academic scores. So some of the things that we are doing to monitor the drops in attendance at the high school level are such things as weekly raffles, movie afternoons, teacher awards, snacks, those types of things. We know that those tangibles are really, really important as we continue to see when you get to those high school levels, that's where the attendance really starts to drop. So we're really focusing in on those. In addition, as you heard the student from Battle mention earlier, that we're really keeping the data also in front of them so that our scholars can see where they are. And we know that we can't get better if we don't know where we're coming from. So we need our parents and community to continue to partner with us on getting our scholars to school. With our out-of-school suspension, our total behavior incidents remain lower than at this same time last year in all areas, in all demographics, and in kindergarten and 11 of the 12 grades. So we know that buildings are continuing to use alternative methods of consequences and handling inappropriate behaviors. We talked a little bit last month about our rising sixth graders and that they show that increase there and some of the things that potentially may be causing that sort of that transitional year to sixth grade. And so we're continuing to work on what we might be able to do to remedy that issue. It's really important to note when we talk about behaviors that we hear our teachers, we hear the concerns in the classroom. Those are very, very important to us. And it's also important to stress that approximately 79 to 80% of our scholars have one or fewer discipline incidents in our entire district. So we have a small percentage of students who are having increased disciplinary incidents, and so we're also being very focused intentionally on looking at how to assist that small group of individuals. So I'll come back up in just a little bit and talk some more about some strategies that we have in place, and I will turn it over now to Dr. Taylor.
Good evening. One of the things I wanted to share with you this evening is the tool that we use for non-evaluative district-wide observation. So we use the model KickUp to do principal and led observations within the classroom K-12. This is data that we're just sharing to you for the first time this year. We used this system last year, and it allows us really to get a kind of an overview of what's happening in the classroom from an instructional lens, like a snapshot, if you will. Last year, we did about 3,400 of these observations in the district. This year, as of date, we're already at 4,200. And so we're up quite a bit. And that's just a big push, obviously, to be in the classroom and view instruction. We know that when we're in the classroom, we have more opportunities to provide coaching or feedback to our teachers. So it's just really great to our administrators that they've been in so much more this year. You will see on this particular side, one of the things that we're looking for when we walk into a classroom is the objective posted? Essentially, like Randy was talking about earlier with the bullseye or a dartboard, when our students know what the target is, the research suggests that there's a higher grader of achievement when students know what they're pushing for from a learning standard. So when we walk into a classroom, one of the first things we're looking for is the objective posted. And you can see district-wide about 3,700, 3,600 observations. About 75% of the time we can observe the actual standard within the classroom space. The second slide that I'm going to share with you tonight is the other thing, or one of the other things that we're looking for is what are students doing when we enter the classroom compared to what are the teachers doing. And obviously we know, and you would not be surprised, that when students are caring or authentically engaged in the instruction, they're more likely to be successful. So we have lots of conversations with our administrative teams about looking for authentic engagement, not just compliant engagement. So when a teacher is instructing and asking a student to do something, instead of just doing the task, are they problem solving? Are they using collaboration? Are they using the skills that are necessary at a deeper level of thinking to be successful? And that's what actually Dr. Day is going to show you on the next two slides, is what authentic engagement looks like within the classroom. But as you can see, 80% of the time nearly when we go into classrooms, students are authentically engaged in their work. And so that's really promising to see. We obviously use this information to drill down, as you can see on there. From a data perspective, we can tailor this to look at what's happening just in a K-2 environment, or at the secondary level where I work, is we can look just within the science department and see, oh, what is that particular group of teachers maybe doing really well, or what are some areas of improvement. So that's really the kick-up tool that we use for observations. Our goal, hopefully this year, will be to get to about 5,000 observations district-wide. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Day, and he's going to talk a little bit more about some of those high-level strategies that we're talking about within the authentic engagement.
So our principals are given this list of high yield strategies. These are research proven. These are proven to move kids forward. We are looking to try to improve on having more student-directed strategies, but there are a lot of teacher-directed strategies that are really good. And I want to caution this by not thinking that something like student goal settings at the very bottom, that's an incredibly effective strategy. But it's not something you would expect to see every time you go into a classroom, because you wouldn't be doing it all that often. That's why things like reinforcing effort and providing practice and asking questions, those are at the top, because we expect to see those almost every time we go in, and they do, because you see that a lot more often. So I don't want you to look at these numbers and think, well, why aren't they more student-directed? We want more and more, but the teacher also plays an important role in those, and these are all high-yield strategies. These aren't just students given a worksheet and saying, go figure it out. This is a lot of good work that goes on in our classrooms. Now, this next slide is on rigor, and I want to real quickly talk a little bit about rigor, because rigor is one of those things that in education everybody thinks they have a really good understanding of it, and people might have different definitions. So just real quickly, rigor is about complexity and the thinking required to complete a task or answer a question. It's not about harder or longer. 45 math problems is not more rigorous than 5 math problems. Okay, I know you probably already know this, but I just want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. Our levels are from the bottom to the top is remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. We hope to get to those higher levels of rigor. Questions you might ask, like the lower levels, you might be, what is the main character in the story we just read? Why did the main character feel that way when this happened? How would you feel if you were put in that main character's shoes? How would blank character from this book react if they were put into this story? And then how could you create a story where the characters are having the same kind of problem that this character had? That's how you would increase the rigor as you go up. We would like our students to have much more rigorous tasks as they go through. DESE sets the standard for what the rigor level that students will be assessed at on the standards that we are given. So we're trying to make sure that our assignments, our assessments, and our lessons match the standard for that rigor. As you can see, our highest rigor level we've indicated here is apply, which is really good because that's right in the middle. We don't want it always to be remember or understand. We're going to see a lot of that, of course, but we're very excited that our apply is our highest one, by far our highest one. And of course, along with this too, create, evaluate, those aren't quite as high because you don't see those as often and they take a lot longer to get to. the one thing that our teachers and our principals and our amazing coordinators are working very hard on when they create our curriculum is really planning out these lessons. You don't just get a rigorous activity on the fly. You have to really plan. It takes a lot of work, and our amazing teachers are working really hard at that. I'm going to toss it back over to Mrs. London.
Dr. Wood, am I stealing your slide on highlights? You want to do it? Do yours? It's up to you. I can go for it. Okay. So some of the positive highlights that we have noticed, obviously, is that our attendance is stable across all of the subgroups. Per the data that I showed just a minute ago, hasn't changed much from last year at this time. We know that elementary attendance is mostly up. That's a good thing. High school attendance is trending down. I talked a little bit earlier about that's one of the focus areas for us. In our next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing there. Really excited that our out-of-school suspension numbers are down by 45% last year at this time. So our goal, our 5-year goal, was to have our decrease in our out-of-school suspensions, and in only 1 year we are close to meeting that. While I must stress that we're continuing to address behavior issues. So it's not just the focus on numbers of getting the OSS down, but how do we partner those two things? Our OSS among our Black scholars is down 48%, and we know we have seen disproportionality throughout the years. Our in-school suspension is actually even trending down 62%, and then overall office referrals for discipline is down 38%. So schools are using alternative methods to deal with interruptions in the classroom. Again, additional opportunities that we have, that 80% is not a number that we're going to be comfortable with. We really want to be closer to 85% to guarantee points on our APR. High school attendance. Again, sometimes we hear a lot actually from our high school administrators that parents are sometimes saying they're adults now, and so they're making their own decisions, and so we really need our parents to partner with us and stress that we need their scholars in school. So how are we addressing the data? The aid department held an attendance meeting with the attendance secretaries to review the attendance procedures to ensure accuracy and efficiency. So for example, to make sure that if a scholar is 15 minutes late to class and that's a tardy, that at 16 minutes they're not just counted absent, but they're late 16 minutes. And so the rest of that time, that 90-minute block, that they are able to be counted accurately in attendance. So we're going back and making sure that we're cleaning up that data. I think Blake had mentioned, Mr. Wilby had mentioned maybe earlier this year or last year that the attendance letters language maybe was a little bit rough. So we're working on those attendance letters, continuing to provide those incentives that I mentioned earlier, and then continuing to share data with our parents weekly. We have newsletters. We are looking at a public service announcement to really get that information out there in front of our public. And then again, I cannot stress enough how important it is. You even heard our elementary kiddo talk about having that attendance data also in front of them to be able to track their own attendance. So schools are posting that building-wide, classrooms are posting that, and then individual students in their binders are tracking that. And then additionally, we're reviewing what structures in the high school setting are causing attendance to be lower. Is there something with our workforce development that we can sort of partner with and give some credit for that for our scholars that have to be at work or choosing to be at work instead? So we'll be reviewing all of that continuously. What we don't have on this slide, but I wanted to make sure that we addressed also was not just the attendance, but the behavior. We talked about the behaviors going down, some of the things that we're doing to address that data. Also is implementing the behavior education plan with fidelity across our buildings. We know that that's a newer tool that we're using, but we want to make sure that we're being consistent with that. And there are tons of tools within that data, that document, and tons of strategies for our staff to use. I wanted to share with you an email that I got from a teacher who said, I had to share something really powerful that I truly believe has come from the circles I have done every day since attending restorative practices. All of my circles have only been proactive except for 2. That means she's really following that 80% building relationships. She said, I actually had my first physical fight of my career, but the beauty of the repairing harm part and the amazing words the students said was inspiring. I thought you would enjoy that. what a powerful day is how she closed that out. So when we are intentional about using the behavior education plan, we're intentional about building those relationships, as we've heard Dr. Yearwood mention repeatedly, then that's also driving those attendance numbers up and the behaviors down. Thank you. And I turn it over to Dr. Porter. Thank you.
Excuse me. And I'm just here to remind you, this is the last slide of every presentation we give, and I'm pretty proud that it's been very structured and controlled and the same this year. We're still doing the same things to make sure that we're being really consistent. And, Ms. London talked about addressing the data specifically, and these are broader terms, but they also help address the data. We're consistent in our professional development. We are consistently emphasizing the same things in our professional development and have a professional development plan. And we've had a survey, and we're really structured and linear on developing that. Dr. Taylor and Dr. Day mentioned kick-ups. We also are in knee evaluation season for principals and teachers. We're also having those teacher opportunity meetings when we see data that is exceptional or that needs maybe a little help. Ms. London also talked about attendance. We are focusing on RTI and really trying to figure out what does RTI mean to everyone, because I think it means something different to different people, and we need to kind of resurrect that common meaning again, and we're working on that. Of course, we have our MAPS and our EOC assessments coming up. We are focused on our APR, those little nuggets in our APR that we can improve that aren't so dependent on our assessment data, but also making sure we are consistent and supporting our scholars as they get ready for assessments. Focusing on our iReady diagnostic, each of our principals and their principal-led data days reports out to us about iReady testing growth in both reading and math. Focusing on our high-growth teachers, what do they do that show us that they're really doing well in moving kids and growing kids, and also all the different things that we do to support scholars in the classroom, of course, but outside the classroom.
Thank you, Dr. Porter, for taking us home. Just want to address one area here. We see the word high growth teachers. We are doing a variety of initiatives, but what's new to us this year, looking at those teachers that have been knocking it out of the ballpark with their data. We have teachers that have done a magnificent job with their special needs scholars, with their L scholars, English as a second language scholars, the scholars that basically we know need that extra. And so right now we're studying these teachers and trying to figure out what characteristics do they have that we can share with everyone. Because we know we have magnificent teachers in our district that are doing phenomenal things. Teachers that come to school every day and give us 1,000%. And we just, to be able to get us to that point where we are excelling and being the best, is develop what is called collaboration. The value we hold true, collaboration, and asking these high-growth teachers to collaborate with others and share what they're doing. So that way we can continue to see a rise. So more to come with that. And I just wanted to depart with that piece before going down. So any questions?
Ms. Burrell.
Okay, come on up, guys.
This is probably a question for Carla, actually. So I would agree that the attendance data is pretty stable. We see a decrease at high school. You talked about how we're kind of addressing that. And from my circle, I know that there's things around the new system and tracking and all that stuff. But the other thing that I noticed is that our attendance rates for our children on IEPs is down 3.5%, and our kids on free and reduced lunch is down about almost 1.5%. Is there anything we're doing for those two populations that we're trying to target, or do we just have a flu outbreak?
So probably a combination. There has been a lot of illness lately. I'll start with our students who are on free and reduced lunch. Many times we have an unknown housing instability situations. So we are asking our homeschool communicators and our staff in buildings to be very intentional about noticing who's missing, and then to make those home visits. And then very often we're finding that a student who was at this home is now in a different home, and then we can get them set up with those McKinney-Vento services and provide transportation to make sure that they get back to school. Absolutely.
Also, a lot of our students at the high school level specifically that are in that status also are workers in their family. So if I can now take the opportunity with the public to share, if we want our students in school during this school day. And so anyone in our community who's employing our students from 9 to 4, our students should be in school. And we have a lot of students who are working during those hours. And so they account for some of that percentage as well. So.
That because I had one of those last year that was supposed to be at work at 4 o'clock every day. And it's kind of impossible when school gets out at 4:05. But he's not accounted in your numbers anymore because he graduated.
Coming soon. I'll be able to say that same thing. When we talk about our students on IEP, then Elise Monsees and I also work very closely with attendance there and Mr. Moore, who's now over that department, to try to determine, are there specific factors? Is there illness there? Are there medical appointments? What else might be impeding our students getting to school? And then also using the same homeschool communicators, counselors to reach out to our families. You're welcome.
Mr. Lyman.
Yep. Same topic-ish, different question. I pulled a Ms. Farrow and looked at the numbers a whole lot. Thank you for answering the email that I sent earlier with the different things. I'm assuming that was you and your staff and team and everything. Eventually, at some point, we're going to have to move away from, oh, this is a COVID problem. Eventually, this is, we've moved, I feel like we're moving away from that. Our kindergartners this year, attendance-wise, or specifically with the rates of OSS per day. I know you mentioned it's a smaller group making, a larger impact. It's a small number of students that are continuing to have, issues. It's great that the numbers are going down, especially compared to last year, but they are increasing at a greater rate. More incidents are happening daily. So what can the district do, or what options does the district have to help curb that?
With our kindergartners specifically?
Just all of the above. Kindergartners being one of them, one of the groups. 7th grade, 9th grade also had pretty significant increases in daily OSS rates.
Yeah, so I think that's not going to be a one-size-fits-all answer.
Sure.
There's a combination of factors there. So we would look at things like the length of the teacher in the classroom, the experience of the teacher in dealing with behavioral issues. Is there some more specific training that maybe the teacher needs? Are there some other issues going on with the student? Because we know behind behaviors, there's something else that's going on, something that we need to specifically target. So I think for our older kiddos, our middle schoolers, that's what we're looking at for sure. Our kindergartners are still coming in very active. And so that's going to be some more just training and working through. We need all of our scholars to be safe. So if it becomes a physical issue and somebody is consistently hitting someone or something like that, then they may need to go home. But I will say that all of our elementary principals are working really hard to keep their kiddos in seat.
I want to add to that. That's why we're exploring, Ms. London. Ms. London is leading up our exploration of alternative schools, where we are allowing our scholars that have high levels of difficulty in their regular setting to go and be immersed in not only their core instruction, but also in social-emotional learning. We've visited by Zoom, several school districts, and just working on a plan, and things are getting well underway. I believe we have a big meeting coming up tomorrow with our internal stakeholders, to do that. So that's a part of it. And then we're also exploring some other alternative programs. We're also looking at the behavior plan, because it needs to be embedded more, because it's rich with tons of resources to be used, and we just need to ensure that that's more into the practice of in our classrooms. But again, we're looking at the data, and we're looking at the data trends now even more than we have before. So yes, we are exploring more. We're working with outside agencies, bringing in behavior therapists, social workers, and things like that. That is happening. But again, I anticipate that just like our overall discipline plan is going down, it'll take a little bit before it really takes hold.
Do you have a question? Mr. Willoughby.
No, yeah, I was just curious. I mean, I think it's very promising what we see in the data. I think something that I think it's hard at times for our community to kind of see, right, as we're talking about our OSS and ISS and our behavior incidences, right? We get emails or phone calls and we see on social media like a variety of instances that can happen. We get told that there is this experience of increased behavior occurring in classrooms from our staff and a feeling that they are not able to effectively respond. And so I know that you shared some of the things that are happening, but I was just curious, I mean, and this is a hard question, and so I hope our community, for many of our staff that answer this, give them grace as they answer this question. But I mean, like, why are we seeing this dichotomy? Like, why are we seeing kind of like our data is going in this direction, but we're hearing these conversations and we're being told around these things?
So, thank you for asking me that question. Because you're asking someone, and I'm going to start off by saying someone that's not a big social media presence person. I do think that plays a role in it. I think, what is the saying that something that's not completely accurate, I will call it, can travel 1,000 miles while the truth takes a little bit longer to get out sometimes. So I think what we're seeing is sometimes some stories that take wings when I'm a dig deep person, and my team knows that about me. I want to know all of the pieces, what really happened, who were the players that were involved, to make sure that if there are consequences that need to be assessed, that they're the appropriate consequences. So there are things happening in buildings that are not appropriate behavior. And those are things that we are addressing, but we are addressing them almost on it has to be on an individual student situation, right? To say, is this the first time we've had this conversation? Is it the 10th time? The consequences could look very different. So I think there's just some of the misnomering about what has taken flight pretty quickly, what's something small that maybe turns into something big, or what's something that's not so small that turns even bigger, that's not necessarily encompassing all of the facts of what really happened in a situation. If I can be as vague about that as possible.
And I want to add, beautiful Mrs. London, we're in a higher age of accountability now. We are demanding more of our teachers. We are saying we're looking at our data, dig deeper, and so on. And so I think that is being passed on because they're now demanding more because of the data. So now we see a greater focus on, look, we've got to get teaching done here because the data is going to reflect what's happening. So I think those pressures we're seeing are also sort of being passed on there. But by no means are we saying that it's something that we're going to just sit back as a district and accept. We're looking and we're meeting and we're planning and we are sort of making the determination. And really, that's where the alternative school came from, was because we saw the need in the data to allow some relief to our schools so that they will do what they're here for, teach, and teach well. That's what we're doing.
Oh my goodness, there you go. Thank you all very much for sharing your perspectives to that answer. That's a question off the fly that kind of came from this, and it's a big one, so I'm sorry that it wasn't something I thought about to pre-plan and stuff. So I just appreciate the vulnerability and honesty because it's a hard question, and I just appreciate y'all sharing it.
I have one small question. In the reviewing what structures in the high school that are causing attendance to be lower, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I'm particularly concerned about high school attendance. Those are large classes, and if we've got 68% of 12th grade attendance, then I mean, we can have all the little third graders coming to school all day long, but it won't make up the difference.
Yeah, we
and also they
agree.
need to be in school. So
we absolutely agree. So
as
I think
a mother
that's
of a senior,
combination.
I can also, it's a hard sell sometimes. So what you got?
So that's a combination, I think, of several things. So there are a lot of freedoms associated with high school, and so that's a bigger conversation sometimes. Are there too many freedoms, and do we need to sort of rein some things in so that we can make sure that our structures are conducive to having kids in seat? In addition to that, some of the things that Dr. Taylor and I were talking about earlier as far as the workforce development, there are a lot of our scholars whose families are dependent upon them to go to work. So how do we maybe embed some more of that into some work study programs so that it's not just that you're missing school, but that you're getting credit for being at work? Oh, come on up. Come on up.
Dr. Taylor just reminded me too, we're using 90/90 data. So 90%, it's not the total percentage of attendance.
So I'll make a plug. If you know of any high schoolers, okay, let me use this one right here. If you know of any ninth or high schoolers out there, please encourage them. We need them in school. Talk to them, right? We want to get that number up. We want the high schoolers to outshine the 22 elementary schools and so on. So please, 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 I'm making the plug. Talk to the high schoolers. Thank you.
So we may not need a PSA because I think we just had one.
Were we recording that? There it was. There it was. Michelle Baumstark's work is done.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We'll keep it rolling with our finance update. Ms. MacArthur.
Sorry, I don't know how to make, someone else besides me is hopefully going to make that work. Yes. Thank you, guys. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are in the budget process tonight with my finance update. Reminder, we started our process back in January where you guys approved the board's budget parameters and budget priorities as the start and the kickoff of our budget process. And then tonight, we're going to talk mainly about our revenues and some of our revenue assumptions, the different components that go into our different sources of revenues. Because of course, we have to know how much money we have before we know how much money we can spend. So that's going to be the first step. And then once we look at revenues tonight, in the coming months, we're going to start looking at some of those different expenditure line items. You know, salaries and benefits are 80% of our budget. And so April's finance update is going to be largely about salary schedules, and where we're going to land on that. We're going to talk a little bit about some preliminary fixed costs tonight, but we're not going to delve in too much detail on the expenditure side, just mainly talk about revenues. Again, I don't usually sit in my office and make a lot of decisions in a silo. We have a very collaborative budget process. We've been working very hard since we set our budget priorities and parameters in January. We've been meeting. I've had a lot of budget meetings, a lot of meetings with the building principals, with departmental leaders, talking about zero-based budgets, accumulating FTE requests for next year. And as we move forward in that process, and again, those items will be brought to you starting next month as well. But tonight, again, revenues, even as we start looking at this, there's a lot of different data points that I use to be able to gather all of this information. So we're going to start off with our local revenues, which, a reminder, is over 60% of our budget is from local sources. But as we gather that information from the assessor, for state and local, we gather information from the state, from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, from the legislature, from different information coming from the state, and then we make collaborative and make recommendations to be able to incorporate all the input. We met with Finance Committee and made a preliminary presentation, a lot of this information to them, and got some input last week, and then we're bringing it to the full board tonight. So, local property tax revenues. Over 50% of our revenue in our operating funds comes directly from our local property tax revenues. And so there are several key components that we look at when we're talking about how we're going to calculate those local property tax revenues for our next school year. So the key components, again, are assessed valuation increase from the prior year. So we take what we ended in December, our final assessed valuation, and then we calculate our increase, what we predict that's going to be for the next year. The new construction amount, there's different things in place, like the Hancock Amendment, that limit the amount of increase that we can take on certain years based on what properties are on the books from one year to the next. And so the new construction amount, we're always allowed to take the full amount of that increase in our calculation when we're calculating our revenue. Our tax rate, and then the last one is the collection rate. And so once we accumulate all those data points, then we can do the calculation of our property tax revenues. So next slide shows you then the historical information about our assessed valuation and the new construction amounts since the 2016-17, which was the year that we passed our last tax levy. Just a reminder there, you can see the yellow highlighted lines, those are reassessment years. And you can see those increases generally are higher than the non-reassessment years. So you can see in the bracket there, the last 5 years, we have about over a 5% increase because of those reassessment years. The 2024 calendar year, which is the numbers that we will use for our 2024-25 budget, is a non-assessment year. So reminder, last year, the 22-23 numbers, we had that large increase of 6.63. That was largely driven by our personal property tax line. And so we do not suspect that we're going to have a large jump in personal property tax again. That was kind of an anomaly. So you can see back the previous non-assessment year before that one was a 2.09% increase. And absent the personal property tax amount from last year, from the 22-23, our real estate line was also in the 2% range. And so when we're talking about what we're going to predict for our budget for the 24-25 school year, we're going to assume a 3% increase in our assessed valuation. And so that $95 million number, that is the increase. So our total assessed valuation is in the $3.2 billion range. And so that number that you see on the screen is just the increase from the current year and what we're projecting if we use a 3% increase for next year. And again, the new construction amount, we can always include the full amount of new construction when we're calculating that increase. And that we're going to use it where it's usually in the $40 to $50 million range the last several years. And so we're going to use $40 million. And so that new construction will be about over 40% of that total increase, largely because it is a non-reassessment year. And so we will not see a large increase in properties that are existing on the books. And so the next piece of that in the calculation is in our operating tax levy. Well, we know we don't have any voter approved increase for our property tax levy since we last went to the voters into the 2016-17 school year with that 65-cent levy increase you can see at the bottom of the screen. And so we do not have a voter increase for next year. So we predict that our levy amount is going to be very similar to what it is for the current year. The operating levy at 4.7012. Again, we do have to have that Prop C rollback amount. So we are still one of the handful of districts in the state that do not have a full or partial waiver of the Proposition C rollback requirement. And so that will be used in the calculation of our operating tax levy. It could change slightly the overall tax levy for next year, but we predict that it will be very similar. You can see the change in the Prop C amount for the 23-24 school year was 0.007, so a nominal increase we're projecting again for next year as well. So the next piece of revenue that we talk about is our Proposition C sales tax. Again, this is property taxes are about 50% of our overall operating revenue, and then the Prop C, our sales tax, is right under 10%. So those two line items by themselves make up almost 60% of our total operating revenue. There's a few other things in our local revenue, like some investment interest and some other miscellaneous things, but those two line items largely make up the majority of our local revenue. So you can see the information coming out from the Department of Elementary Secondary Education is that we have DESE is projecting a $1,374 per what we call WADA, or weighted average daily attendance. And so a reminder, sales tax is collected at the local level. It's then goes to the state and then funneled back through the state through our monthly DESE payment back to the local school each schools. And so that is how it's calculated. What they're projecting is an amount. Again, that's equal to, they multiply, you get your weighted average daily attendance. And again, that's based on the prior year multiplied by that amount that they give you for DESE. And so the last couple years, you can see the historical information on this slide has remained strong. Coming out of the pandemic, we've had 4% and 5% increases in what our Proposition C sales tax. We've had those late supplemental distributions of sales tax the last 2 springs in a row. And so again, DESE's only predicting a smaller increase between this year and next year for the sales tax revenue. Okay, a couple of slides we're going to talk through before we kind of switch our gears over to our state revenue calculations. There are a lot of variables right now that we are still in play with state funding. We're continuing, there's some good news and some bad news. So the good news is that the state adequacy target, or the SAT, that what they call it at the state level, is projecting, you can see they're the original recommendation coming from the governor. Again, this is going to move its way through the legislature, and the final recommendations coming from the House Budget Committee hasn't made its way through yet. But the original recommendation is to put $120 million new money into the formula funding, which increases the SAT from $6,375, which has been flat for the last 4 years, to $6,760. And so that's substantial for next year. Again, the first time since we've come out of the pandemic that they have done any kind of increase to the formula funding. And also, they're recommending that we're full funding of the transportation formula, again, an additional $14 million. And again, that number is not just for CPS, that's statewide additional money going in, but full funding of the transportation revenue line. Again, just a reminder, full funding of transportation really means a maximum of 75% on a good day, but still much better than what we've seen in the past when we're down around the 20% range. Also, there are continued increases to the teacher baseline salary grant. That's the grant to increase teacher salaries statewide. Again, the minimum teacher salary increased to $38,000 for the current school year, and they're recommending to increase that to $40,000. Again, CPS doesn't get to have any of this money, but it is additional revenue that is coming out of the overall education budget statewide. Our current minimum teacher salary is at $40,900, so we already exceed the recommendation for that baseline salary, so we won't get any of that money. But again, additional money that they are putting into education at the state level. And so no real concrete final decisions will be coming out of that House Budget Committee with plan recommendations prior to their legislative break, which is coming up next week as their spring break. And so we'll start again in April and May. We'll have a lot more concrete data, but as of right now, we're assuming full funding of the state foundation formula and full funding of transportation. So that's the good news. The other not so good news is that we have a lot of other legislation that is currently moving through the legislature in Jeff City about school choice. And we don't really have a lot of information about what the impact is. We know the impact will be significant for any kind of charter schools and vouchers. There's various Senate bills currently out there, 1392 and 1391. This last week, 727 was amended to put some of it's actually the voucher bill, but some charter school language was put into that bill as well to try and push some of this stuff through. Again, the Missouri Empowerment Scholarship Accounts Program, that's the voucher bill. These bills will authorize charter schools in Boone County. It has been voted out of the Senate Select Committee. Again, there's lots of concerns about lack of oversight and accountability for charter schools that are currently in the St. Louis and Kansas City area, poor academic performance. Again, there's no boards required for charter schools, so there's no accountability. There's a lot of inefficiency and financial issues that we've seen just historically with charter schools in other areas that have started. So that's something that, again, we oppose here in Columbia. Open enrollment also, anything that pushes students out of our district to other districts, or whether it be other districts or other schools in general, would take away funding from our state funding. And as well as the important thing about charter schools is it's not just the state funding, the local funding follows those students too. So any kind of movement and push could be in the $3 to $4 million range for charter schools. Open enrollment as well. The funding then follows those if they were choose to go to another school district. There's also several different bills going through of any kind of limitation to personal property taxes in general. We have the Senate Bill 190 that came through last year that's going to put limitations on our property tax increases for our those over a certain age, and there's continues to be additional property tax things that are proposed coming through, and so we'll continue to watch those as well. But again, we like to be able to, at least with our local revenue, since we are very highly locally funded, to have control over that revenue, because that's really important to support our school district. So state foundation formulas. So as we gather the different information for those components to calculate our foundation formula, the first one is, like we talked about, that state adequacy target. We also, again, it's based on a weighted average daily attendance. The weighting factors, we get additional weighting factors for our free and reduced lunch, our IEP, or our special education kiddos, and our EL students, and then the funding allocation. And so we'll walk through the next couple slides, each one of these components, and what we're assuming as our assumptions for the calculation for our state foundation formula for next year. So the state adequacy target, you can see, again, $6,375. We've remained flat since the 2020-2021 school year, and even before that, in 1920, it was increased from $6,250. And so we are increasing what the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is saying for next year, is bumping that up to $6,760. So that's significant. And then the following year, the number they have come out with $7,145, so almost $400 increase for the next 2 school years for the state adequacy target. Again, that's about a 6% increase is what they projecting for next year. Again, that's great, but since we haven't had one for the last 4 years, it's really only like a 1% increase if you take it over the last 5 years. And so weighted average daily attendance is that other component of the foundation formula that we haven't talked about for the last few years as well, because we've been able to use our pre-pandemic average daily attendance numbers because of the large impact that's had. So statewide, we saw a large decrease in enrollment in all school districts coming in the 2020-21 school year. So all years, the state law is written so that we can have a 2-year look-back period for the calculation of our weighted average daily attendance. And so you get to take the highest of 3 years, but the last 2 years they've extended that coming out of COVID, and we've been able to use the average daily attendance that we're still using from the 1920 school year. The good news is that we have rebounded. Our enrollment almost is within 100 students of what it was in the 1920. The not so good news is that our attendance percentage, as we talked about in our CSIP presentation earlier, don't know that it will maybe ever be back to the level that it was pre-pandemic, but so that is a factor in when so we take the way that's calculated is we have count days. So in September and January they do count days, and then those 2 count days of the membership is averaged together to get an average membership, and then the attendance percentage then is applied to that membership number to get an average daily attendance there. And so once we get that number, and again that we get to apply then the weighting factors on the next slide. And so you get our free and reduced lunch, our special education, and our English language students. And so you can see this next slide shows the historic percentages of those additional weighting factors that we get to use in that calculation to turn the average daily attendance into the weighted average daily attendance number. So you can see in that first column, the FRL, or free and reduced lunch, is as a decrease in the percentage. So what that means is that more schools are going to qualify to get that additional weighting factor, because the percentage is not as high, so the threshold is not as high to be able to meet that percentage to get the additional weighting factor when you're doing the calculation. And so that means when we're talking about our total ADA, so there's going to be a larger portion of that's going to be, then you'll see on the next slide, that gets to apply that, because there's a larger portion that's above that 16 compared to the 30% that it was in the prior year. And then our IEP, that percentage is 13.30. Columbia Public Schools has always right around the 10%, so we have historically not met the threshold for our special education to be able to get that additional weighting factor in that category, and we do not anticipate that to change for next year. But the English language, that category, you can see that threshold is dropping as well, from 2.29 to 2.09. So again, that means more will qualify for that. And you can, we've talked about this the last few years as well, our EL students' numbers have continued to increase drastically. And so we're going to have an additional weighting factor for those EL kiddos that are going to qualify for that amount as well. And so this is then the next slide shows you the actual calculation. So you get your regular term, which is your membership from your first and second semester, and you average that together. And then we get to add, because we offer summer school here, which not all school districts do, so we get an additional ADA number that we get to add in based on our summer school numbers each year. And then you get the total ADA, and so then you get to add in those three weighting factors, so you would get an additional amount for our free and reduced lunch. And so what we're projecting over there for the 24-25 school years, on the far right-hand column, you can see the free and reduced lunch numbers going up, because we said the number of amount that's going to qualify is larger. Same thing for our EL weight, and then we do get some weighting for our pre-K ADA. The caveat with the pre-K is you can't claim, we do get title funding for pre-K, so you can't claim both, so it's one or the other, so you can't double dip, or what we call it. So if we get title funding for some of our pre-K, then we don't also get state revenue, so that's why there's not a large portion that's attributed there. So we do expect our weighted average daily attendance, that bottom number is right under the 18,800 number, to be able to use in that calculation for next year. And then the next piece we started talking about is that student transportation revenue. And you can see prior to the full funding of that, you can see it was decreasing for 3 years in a row, from 1920 to 21-22. We saw decreases in that formula, and the percentage of reimbursement that we were getting compared to our transportation expense was less than 20%. But the 22-23, then we saw that large increase because the state opted to fully fund transportation, and also the same thing we saw again for this year. And so what we're projecting as the recommendation coming through is that we're going to have fully funding of transportation revenue again for the 24-25 school year as well. And a reminder, that information is based on the current year, so it's a year behind. So when we submit our application for state transportation aid, which is part of our annual Secretary of the School Board's report that goes to the Department of Elementary Education, all of our ridership data and our transportation expenditure information is all submitted through our ASBR, and so that information is compiled, and then that's how they calculate our revenue then for the following year. And so as you'll see, as we switch gears in a minute here and start looking at the expenditure side, since our expenditures are increasing between last year and this year, we're going to see a bump in our revenue between this year and next year, because it's based on that prior year information. And again, you're going to, if you remind, just keep that $6.5 million number in your head, because on the next slide, when we start looking at some of our fixed cost lines, our transportation line, that is not going to equal the expenditures that we have, even though they full funding of the transportation allocation. And so this is, then we're going to start talking a little bit about the next couple slides shows our fixed costs. Our transportation is one of our largest fixed cost line items that we have. And so we start looking at what our projections are going to be for that, as well as in our insurance lines, and then also our utilities are a large portion of those fixed costs that we have to continue from one year to the next. Again, a reminder, this is for the 24-25 budget. You guys approved already the final renewal on the STA contract last fall, in October, I believe, of 2023 for the 24-25 school year, and they are proposing only a 2% increase, and so that's the increase that we're using for our budget number for next year. Again, that's the final renewal. It'll look a lot different next year when we're switching contracts, but for next year, again, only a 2% is what we're assuming in our calculations in our 5-year model. And also last year, if you remember, we were predicting about an 8% increase. That was because of the increase that we, for our drivers' wages that we had talked about last year. But we have had a little bit of decrease. Some fuel and some other line items are in there as well. So our fuel costs were a little bit less. So it wasn't the full 8%. So we're seeing about a 6.5% increase between the 22-23 and 23-24 school year. The next slide, not so great news as we continue to see increases in our property and liability insurance lines. Largely actually on the property insurance line, and so we've talked about this. You can see the large jump when again, our property insurance is done on a calendar year basis, so we've already approved our renewals in December of 2023 for the 2024 calendar year. And so what we're looking at then is a continued increase in that property line. Again, you can see the historic data there, but the large increase when we rebid the contract and for the calendar year 2023 line there. And again, large industry reports continuing to see between 10 and 25% increases in personal property or property insurance, like especially commercial property, driving that increase there, especially organizations like ours that have a large footprint, largely driven by catastrophic claims, like for large, and then all the information coming from our insurance partners is that there's very few large entities or carriers that even insure large entities like ours anymore. So we're fortunate to be able to still have that all under one. Travelers is our insurance for our property insurance, and then the insurance for the general liability line. So an overall increase of 13% is what we're projecting at right over $2.7 million for property and liability insurance for next year. And then utilities, this is great news coming from our utility side of things. We had projected about a 5% increase the current year, but you can see what we're projecting for 23-24 is basically flat, actually a slight increase from our 22-23 actual numbers, which is, again, a combination of some different things. We're fortunate to have Ryan Eulis, who is from Boone Electric, on our finance committee, and so we have some information coming from that too. But we really have obviously the rates continue to increase, so this really is a combination of decrease in usage, mild winters. We had a few really cold weeks in January of this year, but last year was a very mild winter, so our usage was down. And also great news coming from our facilities teams with all of the efficiencies that we've done in HVAC upgrades over the last couple years have really led to a lot of efficiencies in our rates with our utilities as well. So we're able to see basically flat expenditures between last year and this year at $5.6 million. And so again, with the increase, maybe we'll be fortunate and we'll have another mild winter, but hopefully we're projecting about a 5% increase in our utilities for right under $6 million, $5.9 million for our utility line for next year. And so this next slide just shows the summary of all of that that we've talked about on the last couple slides. And even with the minor increases for our transportation and our utilities, we're still, fixed cost lines are still significant. And you can see there the 24-25 budget, we're budgeting over $23 million just for fixed costs for our insurance, our student transportation, utilities, and then our Board of Education and miscellaneous or line that includes things like attorney's fees, audit fees, those other kind of things that fall in that line as well. And so right under $1 million increase that we have to factor into our 5-year model for fixed cost increases from one year to the next. And then the final slide, I just wanted to talk about what were some of the assumptions that we're including in our 5-year model that we have. To date, still a lot of variability in this, but we're going to have some more solid numbers hopefully for next month. Again, so conservative increases in assessed valuation annually. All these things that we already hit on tonight, increases in state funding for the proposed SAT for the 25 and 26 school year, flat federal funding as all that stimulus money is going away, step increases for all of our employee groups in all years, additional funding for salary improvements for the next 3 years, funding for the opening of the new school and the reorganization, as we know, in the fall of 2026 with the opening of the new elementary schools that we start talking about attendance areas and those new buildings. All of that is built in. Continued funding for benefits for all of years of the 5-year model, funding for projected increase in the transportation contract that we know that is going to start for the 25-26 school year and beyond. And again, the other kind of factor there that we don't have a good concrete information is about no accounting for future legislation that may negatively affect revenue, like the open enrollment, charter school voucher information, etc. So that's a lot of numbers, I know, and I appreciate you guys always. But I'm willing to take whatever questions that you guys have.
Mr. Willoughby.
No, I just wanted to comment that I would encourage folks, there was quite a few questions that we asked in the Finance Committee that I don't think we need to like repeat in many ways, but if you want to have, just to see what those questions were that go into some deeper detail around what was presented tonight, I really encourage you to go watch the recording. You can look probably at like the latter like 20 minutes of that recording, and that would you get to where we were asking some of those deeper questions on some of those items that Ms. MacArthur presented then and tonight as well.
I mean, if any of you have a crystal ball, like I'd be willing to like take recommendations.
Not seeing any crystal balls. I'll just ask.
Magic 8 ball.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Signs point to no. Yeah. I had just a clarifying question about the transportation reimbursement. If I'm remembering correctly, the maximum amount of reimbursement we would get from the state would be 75%.
Correct.
Of the ridership from the previous year. But does that only include routes that are above that minimum of 2 miles or 5 miles, the state?
Right. So there's
the routes that we offer as a district for like elementary that are over a mile, we don't get reimbursed for those by the state.
Yep. So there's several factors that we'll never get reimbursed for. One is that thing, anything within the state requirement for, high school is like 3 miles and then elementary is 2 miles. In our district, we do 1 mile and 2 miles. So anything within that difference that we're going to always cover. Any kind of shuttles, we do shuttles to the Career Center, shuttles to Douglas, shuttles to the suspension center, shuttles to our lottery schools. Those are never going to, things that are never going to qualify for reimbursement for state transportation aid.
Yeah, that's a good thing to point out, that we foot the bill for quite a lot of transportation that we are not required to provide, but we do that as a service to families and,
yes, because
families
it's important
everywhere.
to get kids to school, as we talked about earlier.
Right. Okay. I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much, Ms. MacArthur. Did you have something, Mr. Harper?
No, my thing's just turned on and I can't turn it off.
Use both fingers.
All right.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items?
Yes, President Waters, could we pull item 9D6, policy EB safety program?
Sure. Is there anything else? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 9D6, the policy EB safety program?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda minus item 9D6 has been adopted. Is there a motion to approve item 9D6?
I move to approve item 9D6, policy EB safety program.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Mr. Willoughby, did you have a question?
Yeah, in a portion of that larger section of green that's being suggested as a change, there's a sentence that reads, just getting it, all exterior door, it's the second sentence in that paragraph. All exterior doors will remain closed and locked at all times. My question around that kind of language there is like, that seems a little impractical solely in the sense of like kids and staff enter the building. And so my main question is there a specific reason why we have that language in there? And is there any discussion that did happen in policy around the contradiction that could create, or places where someone might question staff saying, well, the doors were unlocked and the doors were open and kids were being let in, or staff were coming in and out, or we were opening it for recess or whatever, right? Like there's just, this seems like a very like black and white sentence when we know the reality that the doors will be open and unlocked at times.
Well, I will say that there was a lot of discussion in policy related to that because there is a practical aspect of it. But I'm going to defer to it. It was administration who brought this language, and also was administration who explained it. So I think they explained it much better than I could. So I'm going to ask Dr. Yearwood if he remembers. I realize Dr. Yearwood was not the one presenting, but
Sure. Yes, sir. Love to explain. Well, as we look at it, we're implementing a new weapons detection system. We're looking at a new. Oh. Yeah. I don't want to steal your thunder, sir. So I would let you gladly, but I'm here to help.
Thank you. You explained it very well in policy, so I'm glad you're here tonight.
As Dr. Yearwood started to say, looking at a new weapons detection system. Whoa, I got some thunder with this. Okay, we're looking at a new weapons detection system as well as a visitor management system. The visitor management system lets us identify who's coming into the building as far as visitors, parents, vendors, whoever, or individuals that may want to cause harm. If our doors aren't secure, there's no need for it. They can come in any door. Our weapons detection system, again, we have main entrances, and they'll be at a couple of other entrances. There's no need for a weapons detection system if our doors aren't secure, if other doors are open. When we look at the news and some of the events that have happened, very rarely, most of those are unsecured doors. Right now at CPS, we do a really good job. Our staff does a really good job of keeping our doors locked. The last couple of years, they've seen it, they want it, they know. When we say lockdown of a school, our schools are locked down. Our exterior doors are locked. Staff is checking the doors. I have an app on my phone that tells me if one of the main doors is opened. Administration will have that. Well, they have it. They just have to activate it. There's cameras on all of our doors, all of our entrances. So if the app goes off, they can look and see, oh, so-and-so just came through that door, or so-and-so has that door propped open. Most of those doors do have fobs, so teachers can still, staff can still enter and exit those. So there's really no reason not to have this. There are a few holdouts who were going to the track. Somebody props the door open. We're going to practice an activity. somebody props the door open, bringing in a lot of equipment or taking out a lot of equipment, you forget to close it. Well, we can be alerted and make sure it's closed. We can remind them, hey, you need to go back and shut that door. But it's the first line of security, really, is keeping people that we don't want in out of our buildings. 'Cause without us saying these doors have to be locked, we don't have that security.
Ms. Snodgrass, or I saw Ms. Snodgrass, sorry. Ms. Snodgrass and then Mr. Lyman.
Two quick questions. One, which I feel like this is just to confirm, when we talk about locked doors, locked from the outside, right? So we're still following, obviously, fire, like safety regulations in terms of everyone can get out. Just clarifying.
Crash bars.
They all have the crash bars.
Yes.
And okay. I just, feel like it's important to remind everyone that it doesn't mean that people are trapped in the building. I think that's important. And also just especially from what you're saying, and I don't know that there's a way that the language could necessarily be changed, but what I take from that is the language is referencing sort of people that have not already been checked into the school. So we're not talking about when elementary school kids are out on the playground, the door isn't necessarily propped open, but obviously the teacher can unlock it and hold it open while they're all walking in. Those kids have already gone through the main entrance at some point during the day and stuff. We're not talking about trying to walk kids around the building and things like that. Okay.
The playgrounds, a lot of those either have a fob system so that teachers can get in those, or if not, the teachers have keys.
Yeah, really, this seems to just be putting into policy what has been an established procedure for years.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've been to a school in forever where a door has been unlocked. So, I mean,
hopefully not.
Yeah. I mean, fobs and keys and everything else. So,
Mr. Willoughby.
No, I appreciate kind of the discussion and response. Primarily, the reason why I wanted to pull it and just talk about that practicality is I also just wanted to make sure that, if we approve this, the policy isn't applied in a punitive way, or if we get into a space where, and what I mean by a punitive way is at the beginning of the school day or end of school day or going to recess, right? That teachers aren't being someone isn't saying, well, they didn't follow the policy that said the door was supposed to be closed and locked the entire time, right? Especially if something happens. I didn't want that to be there. One last question I had around that is some of the larger conversation that we've been having when it comes to the building of the new, the updates to the Career Center have been having that entry point be more of a community entry point on the exterior side to where it is easily accessible. And then we've talked about it and the construction is there around having a space that is once you go past this space, that space right there is the educational space. That is a lockdown zone and everything to get in and out. But that the exterior door there is more of a community space. So if this policy is put into place, would that mean that we would be locking those doors and not having it open and accessible like how we had been envisioning for that space?
Well, if that space is designed as a community space, not as an educational space, and then the next area is the schooling area, I don't think that would really affect it.
Okay. I appreciate that. I mean, because I think there was a lot of envisioning around it in the past conversations around what that could look like, and just at least on a practical side of us being able just to say, I mean, if it changes, right, from a safety and security standpoint, I totally get it, right? And if that is us as a district saying, we're going to prioritize this right now, we understand that we wanted it to be this, but we just can't. That's totally okay, but I think making sure that we're communicating that to the community that we might have made a change over to compared to what we talked about with the building of this new addition, the remodeling of that front piece of the Career Center is just important. So thank you so much. I do appreciate it. And thank y'all for being willing to have this conversation around the policy.
Sure. Okay, seeing no other discussion, we'll just do an affirmation vote. All in favor of approving item 9D6, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the policy is approved. That gets us through the consent agenda. We have one item of unfinished business. It is the substitute teaching and support contract. Is there a motion to approve that contract with EduStaff?
I move that we approve the contract with EduStaff.
Second.
Yes. Is there any discussion? Dr. Holtz, was there something you wanted to say?
It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Education approve the bid award and contract with EduStaff to provide substitute teaching and substitute support employment service on an as-needed basis for the district beginning July 1st through June 30th, 2027. An interview team consisting of 2 building secretaries, 4 human resource representatives, 3 business office representatives, 1 assessment and intervention rep, and Ms. Frau, board member. A total of 11 members made up the CPS interview committee. The interview team reviewed proposals from 5 different vendors. After reviewing all proposals, the interview team identified 4 top vendors and selected them for an interview. Interviews were conducted January 24th and 26th. After the interviews, the interview team found EduStaff to be the best provider for the requested service and is recommending that EduStaff be selected for the noted contract period. Our interview team based our decision on responses when addressing implementation plan, demo of scheduling system, reporting capabilities, recruiting strategies, import process, and training for new hires. We determined that EduStaff was the best qualified provider based on our previous working relationship, their growth with fill rates throughout the 5 years, and the continued partnership with the district with innovative ideas and aggressive marketing and recruiting. We therefore began the process of negotiating a final contract. First read was at the February 22nd board work session, and now administration recommends the final approval of the contract. I have with me today Jim Smith and Chris Akiti from EduStaff, and they'd like to say just a few words.
Good evening, Dr. Yearwood and CPS board members. We at EduStaff have enjoyed partnering with you these last 5 years to provide quality substitute teachers throughout Columbia Public Schools. We are looking forward to continuing to serve the district. We're pursuing new avenues to recruit great people to serve as substitute teachers and spreading awareness that CPS is a wonderful school community to be a part of. Thank you for recognizing excellent substitutes serving with us. This encourages new people to join our team and retain the great people we already have. As you may know, the EduStaff Excellence Award for Substitutes is a new initiative this year we developed with CPS's HR team. We've been intentional working with the district to grow our pool of working substitutes with a variety of initiatives, such as partnering with school leaders to reach into the neighborhoods to encourage parents, family members, and newcomers to the community to get involved by substituting with EduStaff and CPS. We've also made use of alternative pathways to substitute certification to bring people with other valued skills and unique expertise into our schools to substitute. We've seen many of our wonderful substitutes move into full-time positions here in the district. I'm excited to collaborate with the district to implement new ideas we're working on and serve the needs of this district. Our team at EduStaff is grateful for the opportunity to continue our partnership with the district to recruit, train, and support this invaluable resource to our schools.
I don't see any questions. It's probably because we asked them already when we had our first read. There were a lot of questions then, and we appreciate the thorough job that was done in vetting the different companies and interviewing them and providing the board with the answers to our questions. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. This will be a roll call vote. Mic's on, please.
Mr. Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. Farrell,
Yes.
Mr. Willoughby,
Yes.
Ms. Snodgrass,
Yes.
and Ms. Waters.
Yes. All right. Congratulations, EduStaff. You're our substitute provider for at least the next 3 years with an option for one more year twice. So, all right, our next item is a community engagement piece. We have one community member generated item on the agenda tonight. It deals with the special education local compliance plan. Dr. Yearwood's going to explain a little bit about what that is.
Yes, 2 fingers, that's right. Okay. Annually, the Board of Education considers the district's local compliance plan for special services. The plan is then submitted to the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and posted on the district's special services website. This year's plan was approved by the Board of Education in the fall and is currently posted on the district's website. Since local compliance plans were required under the last reauthorization of IDEA in 2004, the district has followed the same required process. However, in 2022, the district made a clerical error and the plan did not go through the entire approval process. This was a one-time clerical error during a period of staff transition and responsibility reorganization. The district reported its error to the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, who accepted the report and indicated no further action was necessary. At its work session last month, the Board of Education was able to discuss improvements to the agenda development timetable. There is often a flurry of activity leading up to the final posting of the meeting agenda. In every given agenda, there are hundreds of items that must be prepared and finalized for review before the board's agenda is publicly posted. I recognize that on occasion there still may be a last minute or emergency items that may still come in, but adjusting the preparation timetable internally for the staff in our organization to have items ready further in advance will help mitigate last-minute errors or missing components of items. It will also provide board members who have access to items in advance of the public posting more time to review the pending items. Working together from an established timeline for determining items in advance and then focusing on preparing those items for the final agenda slated for that month is a cooperative process and will benefit our staff and the board moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yearwood. And then we would invite our community member to come up and speak. Ms. Marissa Hagler has asked to speak about this item. Ms. Hagler, you will have 3 minutes once you begin.
Thank you. I'm here tonight to inform the public of something that was done very incorrectly by our last board president, David Seaman. Myself and another community member brought it to the attention of the board and superintendent, and that is when the correction was made. Every year, the board has to approve a local compliance plan for special education. In August of 2022, David Seaman took it upon himself to approve the plan with no vote from the board. This also prevented it from being put on the board agenda where the public could have voiced their opinion on it. The local compliance plan certification statement is a very simple piece of paper. I have it right here with me tonight where David signed it. It is very easy to read, and it says, and I quote, "The local compliance plan was adopted by the governing board of the agency on 8/9/22. David signed and dated that this happened. This was a blatant misrepresentation to DESE. He went behind the board's back and behind the public's back and decided that he alone would make the decision on the adoption of the compliance plan for special education. I am here today to let the public know what was done to them and to make sure that the board never lets this happen again. Honestly, we should not be surprised that this happened. In the same letter where David called parents and taxpayers vulgar, nasty names."
Excuse me. You've been told that you may not speak about President Seaman as a person. You are to speak of him only as in his role connected to this item. I will let you finish your time. If you bring that topic up again, you will be ruled out of order and you will not be allowed to give public comment again.
Okay, I'm just kind of getting to the point of why this happened. He also told us, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but he also told us that since November of 2020 that he was.
No, you may not.
Okay.
You may talk about the local compliance plan for special education.
Okay. I would like to thank Dr. Yearwood for meeting with me and listening to me about this. He was very respectful to me. he took extra time to actually, he gave me 30 minutes and he gave me an hour. It was very much appreciated. And at the end of the meeting, he said he was fine with me requesting to speak in the next board meeting. I would also like to let the public know in all transparency that Ms. Waters made it very difficult for me to speak today. She tried to force me to only speak at the closed board meeting where the public would never have found out that this happened. I hope in the future that when a member of the public follows all the steps correctly, which I did, and it was a lot of time to do it, to have an agenda item placed on the regular board meeting, that they do not get as much pushback as I did from Ms. Waters.
Is there any other discussion on this topic? Ms. Snodgrass.
I just wanted to note one that I think it's appreciated, as Dr. Yearwood pointed out, there's so much that goes on the agenda, and we know that our board secretary and our staff and everyone else is shuffling lots of paper constantly and trying to keep track of everything, and mistakes do happen. And so I think when we do have a mistake, it's great that we have some community members that can help us out, and also appreciate that Desi was also so understanding. We were able to, once we knew about the mistake, to correct it, to get everything filed the way it needed to be, and to address it. And so I think it's an example of how the community and the board and the administration can work together to make sure that all of our stuff is done the right way. And so I just think we should keep that in mind, and everyone's moving forward, and also really appreciate the administration looking at some of the internal processes to make sure that papers aren't handed mistakenly to someone when they shouldn't be in the future. And I think that's the important part as we continue to improve all the processes.
I just want to reiterate what Jean said, because I do think it's important. We talked to lots of community members, and there is tons of stuff. And as much as we would like to go over every letter on every single page, we might miss something. And if it wouldn't have been for community members saying something, we wouldn't have known about it necessarily, especially since, I think as someone pointed out earlier, 6 of us in our first term. So I want to thank the community members for pointing that out, and continue to reach out to us when you see something that you think needs to be rectified.
Thank you. And I will just clarify that we do welcome public comment. We welcome, there is a policy that allows community members to put something on the agenda. If those agenda requests have to do with personnel, then they will be placed in closed session. And if they have to do with a district procedure, then they will be placed in open session. So that is, that's our practice. All right, we will move on to new business. Our first item is discussion only, and it is appropriately the consideration of policy BDDH1, public participation at board meetings. Mr. Harper, would you like to lead us through that discussion?
Sure. So the policy committee has recommended that this just be placed on this agenda for first read, so that the public can get a chance to have a month or have some time to inform us of their opinions on this. So the reason for this is, one, there were some law changes that needed to go into this, and that sparked a discussion as to the changes in the public policy, or the public participation policy. First and foremost, we want to comply with the law. As the committee talked, we wanted more clarity and more clear language, and we hope that a clear process will allow more people to speak. And so that's what we did. So if you want me to, I'll just hit some highlights of the changes in the policy. The law allows for residents to speak, but the policy committee felt very strongly that we needed to say community members, because our community is more than just the residents of the district. It includes employees, and it includes parents who may live outside the district. So we felt like that they should have the same rights as a resident. Written comment, while there is written comment in the current policy, we added a more clear explanation about how to process the written comments. Next is in-person public comment. We took the old policy, MSBA, and other suggestions and added things to it. I will add that it was requested by admin that we set the date for the time to register to be noon on the day of the meeting, because oftentimes there's a lot of rush, and the flurry that you're referring to often does happen right around 3 o'clock on that day. So admin asked if we move that back to noon, but that is in this draft. The new draft specifies what's in the registration. I don't think that's necessarily a change, but it is a change to put it actually in the policy. We added, right now, the priority is action items. This policy adds action items and also other items on the agenda before general discussion. The other is that we wanted to state that speakers will not be denied the opportunity to speak on the basis of their viewpoint, and that speakers must follow the expectation in the section titled Conduct of Public Meetings, which is also a new section, which basically we put all the conduct in one section instead of having it throughout the policy. For agenda items, a lot of that is really just ensuring that we're following the law. I think whenever this was drafted before, we drafted it before, I think MSBA made their suggestions, so we made this more in conformity with the law. Again, community members rather than just residents. We stated that the board secretary shall place the topic and the community member's name on the agenda in a separate section so that we have a uniform policy. Currently, we have that the speaker speaks for 3 minutes. The policy committee is suggesting that if somebody comes forward and wants to put something on the agenda, they should have 5 minutes rather than 3, so that they get more time to speak. This also makes it clear that questioning of the person standing in front of us is permitted when they put an agenda item on. And then MSBA suggested we add the actual grievance policies and procedures and a cross-reference to the items that somebody may want to take up before they consider public comment. I think we had a vague reference in our old one. And then, of course, the conduct at public meetings, just that community members shall may comment on. No community member may comment on disciplinary matters, personnel matters, or matters that are unrelated to district business. Disruptions from the floor may be ruled out of order, and that community members are encouraged to provide the board a written copy of their comments and any other supportive documents. And again, this is a draft; it's a working document, so I appreciate any suggestions and comments.
If you'd like to make a comment, Mr. Lyman?
I have 2, I guess, and I hope no one throws anything at me. 30 minutes. We're stuck on 30 minutes. If 15 people all want to show up and talk about 15 different things, the first 10 are who gets it. I mean, how many times in the last, I know at least while I've been on the board, there hasn't been one single time when we have had 10 people get up and talk. So I know that we have the ability to suspend that time, but then also, I guess we would know by noon day of if we have more than 10 people who have signed up and what they've talked about, so we'd be able to suspend that. Is that my thinking there is correct? If we've got 12 people that have signed up and everybody's talking about something different, we can suspend the rules for that one meeting so that all 12 would have the ability.
Does anyone have a direct answer to that question? April?
Yes,
Okay.
we would be able to suspend those rules. You just clarified that by saying if 12 people signed up and they're talking about 12 different topics.
Right.
Because if 12 people signed up and they're talking about the same topic, we only need 3 if we want 4, but we don't need to, so that it gives other people the opportunity to speak on other items.
But yes, the board has the ability at any time to suspend these, and I would hope that this board would take that into consideration if we had a whole bunch of speakers at some point registered.
And number one, and then number two, signing up day of or like right now. Somebody or walking in and it's like, you know what, I didn't have the chance. And I know we give ample opportunity in different ways to, you know, get your name on the list. But if you're stuck in a meeting all day or you don't have the ability, one reason or another, to call or email in and get your name on, sign up day of 6:15 p.m. I want to make a public comment.
Ms. Brow, do you want to take that?
So prior to my work on the board, I did give public comment 3 times. One of those was at the spur of the moment as a result of conversations that was taking place up here. And I believe I spoke with a board member here, and I thought they made a really good point, is that if I'm a community member that's engaged, I'm engaged enough that I'm looking at the agenda, I've kind of got an idea of what I might want to speak about. I'm probably not sitting in the audience just waiting for, oh, I had a light bulb moment. I want to get up and speak. And so it helps with planning. And, you know, I was absolutely not a fan of this. I wasn't on the board. I was not a fan of this. I had meetings with lots of people when they first put this into place. But after I went out and did research and I looked at what was covered, what has been being covered at these board sessions in the last 2 years, what I found is it is now 9:30. Prior to COVID, they routinely got out of board meetings at about 8:30. They would have 10 or 15 speakers, but they got no update on achievement. They got no program updates. There was no substantial conversations about a lot of the things that we're covering here. And I think we need to hear from our public. We have lots of ways for that to happen. We also only have, I mean, we could have a meeting every night. I don't know if the board wants to do that, but we have to figure out what's a good balance for that. And right now we're getting a lot of meaty stuff. I haven't seen a bunch of comments from people saying that they're having trouble getting on the agenda. And Kristen tonight, I advised her on Friday to sign up because I was afraid she wouldn't get on, and she was the only one who signed up. So I encourage people to sign up. Sign up every time you want, and we'll go from there.
I do want to also add that people are able to sign up once the agenda gets posted. So it's not just if you're working Monday and you don't have time to do it by noon. I mean, you can sign up online all weekend long, and you can make a phone call Thursday afternoon or anytime Friday or anytime Monday before noon to do that. So I think the people that I have spoken to on the board have been mindful of making sure that there's enough time for people to sign up if they want to.
Just it is one of the few ways that all of us are together and are able to, you know, interact with the community while we're together. That seems to be a limiting factor. I know that there's ample time, and I'm sure that if any one of us got an email or a text message from somebody that says, "Hey, can you throw me on?" we could, you know, reach out to Ms. McDonald and make it happen. I mean. Again, then it's another way that then limits a public member's ability to get on, and so I just feel like this should be the easiest thing in the world to do.
Well, go ahead, Ms. Snodgrass. Well, I also have had many conversations with our board secretary, who is in charge of processing all of these requests, and there is a significant amount of time in going through and making sure that what they are addressing is either an agenda item. She puts little notes by them, agenda item first, because we prioritize action items, and then other things. In some cases, what people want to speak about is actually a personnel issue, which then needs to be kind of redirected, and staff needs to intercept that so that we don't get into a situation where we're in a board meeting and somebody is complaining about their child's teacher on, while it's being live streamed. For example, like no one wanted to do that today, I'm just saying, or, bus driver or anything else. So just for logistics alone, I mean, if you say up until the time of the meeting, or just text Noel, we'll make it happen. I think we will see Noel fall over onto the floor and maybe not get up. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as someone who was on policy last time this came up, one, I think it's good that it's been able to be revisited, because that was something that we discussed. I think the time limit is I would say the thing that or one of the things that I did have concerns about previously, but I will just say that in part being able to revisit this a year or so later, to my knowledge, there has not been anyone that has complained to say like, I was going to speak, but I couldn't because I couldn't get signed up in time. And so maybe I'm wrong, in which case, but okay. So, and I think that's important to consider too. And I think that if we are getting that feedback, then we also have the option to revisit maybe at a future date. And I think for me, the fact that it has been revisited and that we've had that time to see the initial changes in effect and to see what has happened and have not received that feedback, at least for me, makes me feel much more comfortable with it. And also I don't want Noelle to fall to the floor and not be able to get up.
No, one quick thing I just want to add is I've actually gotten feedback to the opposite. Our public want to know if they're going to be able to talk. And when we put that deadline too close to the meeting or so close to when executive session is about to start, and things start to get crazy kind of on the back end, it takes me longer to get to our public, who I email individually if they are going to speak or not. They want to know if they're coming. They want to know if they need to have that preparation. So honestly, as a courtesy, I'm always thinking about them. I love you guys. But when it comes to public comment, I'm thinking about them. And so I want to get to the public as quickly as possible, let them know if they are going to be coming to our meeting and making sure everything has been vetted, because there's also the 3 consecutive meetings. So I've got to keep track of people that might want to meet or might want to talk at 3 consecutive meetings. So there's several different things that happen behind the scenes. And I just want to make sure that we're being fair to people who want to come and talk in that way.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with how it is. It's more just I know that at one time we didn't have that sort of thing, so it's just that continued discussion of maintaining this.
Mr. Willoughby, did you have something?
Yeah, I have quite a few. Is it okay if I do it kind of in order of stuff?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
9:42, so just so you know.
Oh, no, yeah. This is what is up on the agenda and what we have here tonight, and I appreciate both being printed. The document that is being proposed for us to review for first read is somewhat a little bit different in organization and order of items. And I think there are a couple things, like Paul, that you highlighted around like maximum of the minutes and like community member verbiage change that isn't highlighted in red, and some things are highlighted in red. And then, and could I just add one more thing? And I guess part of that too, in like the well, actually, I'll pause there, sorry.
Actually, this is the last version of what the policy committee, the policy committee had, like, each meeting had a different version. These were the last edits from the prior version because it got very confusing having a redlined of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually we really need to have a version of the prior to the new. I don't think there was enough time to get it on this meeting, so I apologize for that. But the reason for the red this time is because those are the last changes that the policy committee made to this policy.
No, I appreciate that. And that was, I was just gonna ask, like, if we could, and if once we get to like y'all's next meeting on the agenda and stuff, what you just shared there, just so our public can see that a little bit more clearly. Kind of in that, I couldn't find here, and it could just be my bad reviewing over the weekend, and even now going to do a quick thing, I couldn't find anything on public hearings. And so I was curious, is that the recommendation of it being cut by y'all, or is that just more of an oversight of it not being in the policy?
Let me check real quick. That might be from the MSBA core
I
policy.
think there was a different policy that addressed hearings because it said we were no longer required to have a budget hearing, but we had to have at least one hearing, and it could be a tax rate hearing.
We
I
do
think-
have
is that
a different
separate
policy that has to do with hearings. I'm gonna, when the previous policy committee passed this policy, it was to address the change to the law regarding agenda items. But this committee wrote that part of the policy before MSBA had come up with a guidance. MSBA came up with guidance then late this summer and sent it to us. So I'm going to check the MSBA policy real quick to see if maybe that was something that was taken out.
I believe it was taken out because there are other policies related to specific hearings, such as the tax hearing. That's actually in another policy that I think actually we amended just a few months ago that actually specifies that.
Okay. If I in that final document of the changes, if we could note that for the public, I think that'd be great, just so that they're seeing that where that got changed to and how we did. I remember us approving that hearing policy, but just so that we have that there. Mr. Harper, you highlighted around like the reasoning around resident and community member from that discussion. I know when this was being put into place in the guidance around kind of the law change of allowing for that, was one of the biggest things was that there was a concern, I think from a legislative side as well as I would say from a local side, of people that weren't residents of the community coming and wanting to have agenda items being forced on it. And so I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about, I understand what you shared around the philosophy, but in that sense, like what was discussed, or if at all, around that concern of people that were not a part of this community forcing things on the agenda that aren't residents, that aren't really invested in what's happening here.
Right. That's the standard, is that at minimum you have to give residents. That's what the law says. But as we started talking about what does it mean, what other people who are in our community who may have, quite frankly, maybe even a right to come to us. For example, we've got non-custodial parents who live outside the districts. Mm-hmm. We don't want to cut off the ability of a non-custodial parent to say something to us related to a policy that maybe needs to be changed for their child. So we added parent or guardian. At the same time, we may have employees who live outside the district. Our employees should always be able to come to us, and we all felt very strongly that we should add those people who are truly community members to be able to do this in the same way that a resident of the district could.
Okay, so from Neil's conversation, like from your perspective, and Ms. Ferraro, you can share very similarly, like are you all envisioning, obviously in that process, right, especially on getting an agenda item on the agenda, they do have to go through the superintendent. So are we expecting the superintendent to be in some ways the filter on that, to be able to judge, like, is this a community member that has a vested interest in this, in the way that you're talking about, right, and how the policy committee has talked about folks, or where do you all envision that kind of filtering occurring?
Now, the definition is an individual who resides within the boundaries of the district, which is the resident, a student, a legal parent or guardian of a student, or employees of the district. So it's very, very specific as to who the community members are, and we should be able to track that very easily.
Okay, I appreciate like this deeper conversation around it, because I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying, like what y'all are philosophically like wanting, and I agree with that. It's more of just making sure that I am understanding kind of where y'all thought process were on that. On that item of the 3 and 5 minutes, on item under agenda items, so on the third page, number 10, it's at the end of that second sentence, it goes, unless the board president allots more time to the discussion. I was curious from that standpoint, why y'all thought like board president there, and the only reason why I asked this is primarily of it puts position in the board president that could very much say like, this person, because I agree with what they're talking about, gets more time, but this person doesn't, and how does that not violate potential like what is it, censorship of thought, or how does that get worded? You get what I'm saying, Mr. Harper is the lawyer.
April, honestly, I think that may have been, yeah. Subsection 10.
Just looking to see if it's in the core.
I couldn't find it in the original, our
It's
current
not in
policy.
the original.
So
I'm
the-
looking in the core.
I think it may be in the core.
The other language for comment, suspending the comment rules is by majority vote of the board. And I would be comfortable with that language too. Although I'm, not just because I don't want to be accused of censoring people's thoughts.
It is, the
But-
MSBA recommended language is the board will allow the resident 5 minutes to present their issue to the board unless the board president allots more time for the discussion.
I would maybe offer an amendment like the board by majority vote, if that is something that sounds good to policy committee and the rest of the board.
I just want to clarify, though, the way it's written here is that the board president can allot more time to the discussion, but we're actually talking about the presentation, right? There's no time limit on the actual discussion itself within the policy. So I'm not sure if that's, I trust MSBA, but maybe that's like something that our policy committee could look at or check in with MSBA about to sort of get some clarification, and it might require a little bit of rewording.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. If someone's giving a presentation and they're going through 100 PowerPoint slides, they've got 5 minutes, and then we might want to ask them questions and stuff. Is that included in there? Okay.
That makes more sense.
Yep.
And this is an oversight on my end because we approved this policy when I was moved this the first one when I was policy chair, and so I guess it's more of a conversation. I think we could, like, policy committee, I could have if y'all haven't, and y'all could share if you did. Obviously, we have that piece in the policy that says, like, if there's more than 3 items that are similar, like, we can say that only those first 3 get to talk. I was curious though from that standpoint, and again, I take ownership of this was an oversight piece that I didn't think about at the time. Like, are we saying that, let's say we have 6 people register, right? And the first 3 are we asking, are they in support or against an item? And, like, let's say those first 3 are in support and the other 3 that are registered after are against, right? What is that balance?
You take this one. We had this conversation.
Honestly, we had that exact conversation in policy committee. I mean, for me personally, I'm just going to say we had that conversation in policy, and that is what the policy committee voted in.
Yeah.
So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. No, that makes
Whatever
sense.
you think of it, I am more than willing to whenever we get down to it, to consider amendments, especially to that sentence. Yes.
I mean, I think it's hard to. We wanted to be more definitive than the repetitive in nature, because what do you determine as repetitive in nature? But at the same point, someone did bring up the fact that, well, 6 people sign up, the first 3 that show up are all in opposition to something, and then the other 3 that liked it, they didn't get to speak. And that's kind of hard as well. I mean, I think there's got to be an understanding of wanting some flexibility between all of us. I mean, I would hope that if there's a hot item, that we're more open to listening to more comments if needed.
So
I was just going to say, if there's 6 people that all show up to talk about the same thing, then, I mean, I think all 6 people should be able to talk about it. If they're the only 6 people that show up.
Well, yeah, and I think that, right, that's a unique scenario, right, of, like, if that's all that people registered. And I guess the other thing is, like, we just talked right here around, like, and this was a part of Mr. Lyman, kind of what you shared of, like, if we do end up having like 12 people register and it's all individual different things, we could vote to change to rule out. And I guess my question on that is from a very much to what Ms. McDonald shared about being good to our community members. How do we plan well for that, right? Without violating sunshine law. And what I mean by that is that a judgment call that we're going to put in on the board president to bring up in the conversation and tell those last 2 people that registered that potentially the board will approve like changing their rules, and you can go and please be here, because the big question there is, right, I don't want us to be able to talk and be like the board president knows, okay, yes, we'll be willing to do that, right? And that violates that sunshine law conversation of us talking about a vote before, not in front of the public. Well, at the same time, I get us wanting to have that flexibility, right? But how do we make sure our community members know, yes, please still come, because potentially this could happen.
We've had 3 people sign up before and 2 people show up, and so there's been 1 absent. And so it's like, if you sign up, show up, because even if we only allow 10, you might get that spot.
Well, it wouldn't violate sunshine anyway. I mean, you could have 12 people sign up that are all talking about a different topic, and if each one speaks for 1.5 minutes, that gets within the 30 minutes. So, I mean, I don't know that we should ever be emailing back someone and saying, there's no way, in a snow globe that you're going to be able to get on to speak, because it's 30 minutes. However many can speak in 30 minutes is how many it's going to be. And then we can decide if we're going to extend that period.
Just real quickly, just so you know, even if we have over 10 people sign up, which we actually have had since this went into effect, no one is told do not come. We tell them they're on the waiting list, and that please do come, because sometimes people don't show up. And typically that's what I've observed, is that there is 1 or 2 people that doesn't. So we definitely tell them still to come.
And I'll be honest, I would hope that if something, caused like 42 people to show up for something, that we're very mindful of the public's need to discuss with us, and maybe make special arrangements for a topic that is that important to our community.
Yeah.
I appreciate this, and because this is that first read, that's why I'm asking a lot of these questions, and just kind of getting that practicality out there for folks too around some of these things. So thank y'all so much. I appreciate it, President Waters, Mr. Harper, Ms. Farrow, just kind of giving that context for all of us.
Sure. And I would encourage, if there are additional conversations that individual board members want to have with each other, obviously we can't have 4 of us together, but 1 at a time, with another board member, I think that's totally fine. Phone call, meeting, coffee, whatever.
I was going to just ask Blake if he would send Paul and myself and Karen some of what you just said. Make sure we got it all. Yeah. Thank you.
And I would encourage the general public to do the same.
Thank you very much, Policy Committee and Board, for the nice discussion. Okay, we'll move on to consideration of a resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation improvement bonds, Series 2024, and certain other documents and actions in connection therewith. Is there a motion for this? Is this thing on?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Ms. MacArthur and our very patient financial advisor.
Thank you for saying that. I was going to say, I really appreciate Matt Courtney and from Piper Sandler, which is our financial advisor, and Tony Stegeman from Gilmore and Bell, our bond attorneys, for being here to answer. And you guys can come up to the microphone too. I'll give a little summary about what's happening, but they are the experts, and so they can definitely take any questions that you have. But again, this is a resolution authorizing the sale of the $40 million of bonds. We authorized the go-to-market resolution last month. And so this is the reminder, the $40 million is the second $40 million of the $80 million that was authorized by our voters back in April of 2022. And so we will need your approval of the documents tonight to allow us to go and have the actual bond sale, which is scheduled on Wednesday of this week, March 13th. Again, Matt, Tony, any other questions that you guys might have, I'm sure they would be happy to take them.
To add, Heather went over it pretty well. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having us here. As Heather said, the go-to-market allowed us to put bond documents together and distribute them to the market. The bond sale is currently scheduled for Wednesday at 10 a.m. Underwriters have been looking at the documents, making sales calls, all of that. 10 a.m. is the deadline for underwriters to provide a bid. Then we would award the bonds to the underwriter that provides the lowest net overall interest cost. At that point, the bonds would then close. I believe it's March 28th, And that is all subject to parameters that are within the bond resolution. I believe they're on page 6, and happy to take any questions about the sale or the process, and Tony Stegman with Gilmore and Bell can answer any questions on the documents themselves.
My only question is that I understand our financial position, our ratings are very good, so we should get a favorable rate. Is that right?
Yes, the district is rated within the top 2 levels that both Standard & Poor's and Moody's publish.
Yeah, so we actually already got our ratings. We had our rating calls a couple weeks ago, and it was, I think, we were going to send that, if we have not already done that, we were to send them out in the Friday report, but we did. There was a press release done from both S&P and Moody's with our positive ratings and all the information that goes into that calculation and how they determine that.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know that we have detailed questions on the inner workings of bond sales. But thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a hotel room in town for tonight.
No.
Oh,
I do want to just highlight from a legal point of view. So the resolution that you have in front of you approves, or on your systems, approves several documents that are required in connection with a bond issuance of this type. Two ways of doing this. A lot of times the sale will happen on the day of the meeting, and so at the time we show up with our resolution, it already has all of the interest rates and everything filled in. And the other way to do it is what you have in front of you tonight, which we sort of call a parameters approval. So as Matt mentioned, there's a section of the resolution very specifically sets out, okay, well, here's everything that you need from a legal point of view, but the bond sale ultimately has to come in within the parameters that are in there. And so just for example, and these parameters are financial terms that your financial advisor advises on, and then we put them into the document. So they've got like a maximum true interest cost of 4.5%. So typically what Piper gives us to put into the documents is a very, very conservative number. So I assume that you're expecting the true interest cost to come in well under 4.5%. So.
And again, this is a competitive bond sale taking bids, so the bonds will be awarded to the firm that provides the lowest interest costs. So there's some satisfaction that you're getting the best rate available to you in the market at that time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Seeing no more questions, we'll be ready for a roll call vote. Please turn on your mics.
Okay. Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
Ms. Farrell?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Lyman?
Yes.
Ms. Snodgrass?
Yes.
And Ms. Waters?
Yes. All right. To market, to market. Thank you very much. All right. We have a first read and discussion of our visitor management system. Is this Ms. Baumstark? She's probably asleep in her office. She's here.
Yeah. Sorry, Ken and I were in the lobby. We have in front of you, we've gone through the RFP, the bid process to bring forward a visitor and volunteer management system. Districts across the country use this as an additional layer of protection to help address knowing who's coming into your buildings, making sure that those individuals meet some minimum security requirements. So for example, for an individual who's coming in as a visitor into your building, it does do the sex offender registry check. We have to comply with law with regard to sex offenders being on campus, and so this provides us an additional way to be able to do that. It will also help us be able to better manage custody agreements between families, so we'll be able to have that information available to us almost immediately. And then it also provides some automation of our volunteer process, which, as you may or may not know, the law changed a couple years ago. So there are some additional requirements of school districts now when it comes to having cleared volunteers in your buildings. So it's an access control point, and really it's managed by safety and security. We use the volunteer piece of it, but it really is a function of safety and security. So anything else you want to add?
And again, as we always say, there's not just one system that's going to be the end-all, be-all. So we layer our security practices, the secured vestibules, the locked doors, visitor management, and people. That's a big part of it. So having that, being able to check who's coming into our building, identify them, check them against sex registry, trespass lists, custody issues, that's huge. Being able to pull up that paperwork and see who has custody, who is the custodial parent or guardian, and having that information right there.
Thank you. So I will say I see a lot of green cards. There's going to be some questions. Just in the interest of time, if you don't know the answer to a question, or if, you know, this is just a first read, so we can ask the questions and you can process them and send an email to Dr. Dr. Yearwood can communicate with the board that way so that we don't have to discuss every single page of the 78-page agreement tonight. But go ahead and hold up your cards. Who wants to go first? April Farrow.
I have lots of questions. So I will just offer up that Dr. Yearwood, if you would like me to have a separate meeting with Michelle, because she would just love to spend hours and hours talking to me, I'm happy to do that. One of the things that I'm most interested in learning about is the use of it for the volunteer management system, which I think is wonderful. But it also made me think about the fact that, you know, I volunteered in our schools for 15 years and never had a background check because I never met that classification. So I'm just wrapping my head around different things on, you know, who's in there, how is it going to be used? Are we going to be expecting, you know, a lot of our buildings have volunteers, but it's organized by their separate parent organizations. And so is that something that's going to be used? So I'm just thinking through a lot of that, and then also thinking about it checks against the sex offender registry, but are there not also some crimes that you can't be within a certain amount of feet from the school?
Yeah, so there's actually two different things that are happening, and I think you might be intermingling. So you have the visitor portion of it, which is anybody coming to visit a school building, right? And then you have a separate portion of this system that is the volunteer management piece of it. The law with volunteers changed back in 2019. And so that requires, if you're going to be alone with individuals, if you're going to have access to confidential information, that you actually go through the same check that our employees go through. You have to be fingerprinted. And so there is a management portion of that in order to be able to get them cleared. This will allow us better tracking as far as like there's a list now, like a master list, and probably we should maybe sit down and go through some of it, because I think you have some different, I mean, you and I have worked together for a long time on volunteer stuff, and so you probably have some more nuanced questions about, can the system do this, this, and this, and it can do some really awesome things.
I think it can too, and maybe it's a question of can it, but is that what is that how we want to use it, and that's just me wrapping my
Yeah,
brain
so we have the
around
basic level of
together.
usage, but then we also have some additional things that are going to make us better.
And what about whether they're visitors or volunteers? It's checking the sex offender register when you come by as a visitor, but it doesn't check for if you committed this offense and you still can't be within 500 feet of the school. Like if I don't know, I guess we're checking the UPS driver. I don't know who. Talking to the mic.
I'm sorry. So we have an internal trespass list of folks and we can upload that into our system, so it will notify us of those as well.
Okay, Ms. Snodgrass.
Okay, so that April's question clarified one of my questions, which was, I guess, like that differentiation between visitor versus the other, because like visitors show up, but you don't necessarily need to do anything in advance, right? That process is the same as it was, just you're sort of checking in.
It is, yeah, it's the same. We have layers of protection, obviously you can't, and we just had a discussion earlier about doors, right? And so when you come into a building, you're buzzed in, you stay in that secure vestibule, you swipe yourself in, we run real quick to make sure there isn't anything, there isn't an alert that needs to be given to the principal or whomever. You indicate where you're going. You get a badge printed that has your picture on it, so we know who's in the building. It's also, a safety thing for us when you think about if we were to have to be in a lockdown situation, we know who's in our building and why they're there.
So,
I've seen the system in place about 20, 25 years ago. So it's not anything they have updated their systems, and I've seen larger school districts with this very same system in it be effective. As a matter of fact, I remember myself getting visitors into a school and having to tell an adult, "Hey, sorry, there's a hit on you," privately. Come explain, and then letting them know we've got to get this cleared up and so on. So that's wanted to add that story.
No, I appreciate that. I think things that it makes me wonder about, which I'm sure will be addressed maybe internally with procedures and stuff, just thinking about like the times that I've been as a visitor to the school, like when my kids are having like the Valentine's Day party or something, and you have 500 people, like 100 people showing up at once. And now if you're talking about right now, you have to like sit and wait and your badge has to get printed, right? And all those things. And just so sort of thinking about for those few occasions when maybe you're going to have more high volume, like making sure that we have those right procedures in place. And I guess the other thing I just want to make sure that we're thinking about is the security of who has access to the system. I realize that some of that is publicly available data, but just to make sure that it's not like every staff that's logging in, and sort of who is actually able to access it and what can they use that information for. And I'm sure there's going to be things in place, and I think I just want to like make sure we're thinking about that at the forefront as well.
We can set who gets alerted if there's an alert, and the analytics of it, running reports. Be restricted to certain people.
Does anyone else have a first comment? Mr. Lyman.
I have two questions. Number one was kind of asked already-ish, but a lot of our schools, particularly elementary schools, have got parties and the whatnot, but then thinking about, the middle schools, the high schools, the after-school activities and things like that. Is this going to be something that's specifically only used during the school day? So games and the whatnot. Okay. Number one. Number two, then, to what Dr. Yearwood mentioned, the additional training that's going to be necessary or needed for our staff that are those frontline folks who may have to pull that person aside and have that potentially very tense conversation. What's the thought process there for working with those folks?
As I said, those alerts would come out to my staff, to designated administration within the school. I don't anticipate admin assistant or secretary having to have that discussion with an individual.
I mean, that assumes then that they are applying early. Somebody shows up at 12:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, looking to, I need to pick my kid up, or whatever the case is. It's a little different.
Well, and that happens. But our front office staff they are well trained, and they do this on the daily basis as far as greeting people coming into our buildings. There are avenues to turn off and on for large events, and so to Jean's point, we'll have to have some of those conversations, but it is intended to be while we have children in class on campus as an access control, an additional layer of protection with that. One of the things we did through this RFP process was we actually brought in a lot of our front office staff to sit in through a really detailed demo, so that for both of the finalists that were brought, so that they could ask questions, they could see how it works, and a lot of their questions too were like, okay, so what happens if here's a scenario, and then talk me through like how would this support me, or how would I be able to utilize this tool effectively. So really good questions.
I'm sure 99% of the time it's going to go exactly smoothly, and then it's just that 1% that we get hung up on. So
well, with everything that is new, there is always a learning curve, but yeah.
Does anyone else have a first comment? I have one thing. The RFP or the bid included language about model schools. Have we identified which schools are going to be the models for rolling it out?
The summer programs, summer schools.
Yes, be our summer school programs. And we'll be testing it out then. And
at 3
many of
schools
these-
or all schools? Sorry.
Sorry?
At 3 schools or at all schools? It said something about 1 per level, I thought.
The bid does say
Okay.
1 per level.
For the training, our initial training.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
She's asking if we pick which buildings. She wants
We
to know-
haven't picked the specific buildings yet. I would also like to add that many of these will be in the secure vestibule. Might be a podium like this, so that hard conversation, those folks won't be into the interior of the building. They'll be in that secure vestibule, putting in their ID, and that information will go to the secretary, our front office staff. That way, they may not allow them into the main building, and the administrator can come out and have that conversation with them.
My other question was, do you anticipate this requiring any additional FTE?
No.
Okay, so we're just going to use existing FTE and train them on how to use it. Okay, and then we'll have to communicate very clearly to our visitors that they're going to need to bring an ID anytime they come to a school. Oh, Mr. Willoughby, go ahead.
This comment, it's going to make it sound like I'm trying to keep a second round from happening. I'm not. And I know that we already have tentatively a pretty heavy work session agenda, but potentially if y'all, leadership, if you see that we might have a lot of more questions that we send after this meeting, if we could potentially do a second read just for review to get some more answers questioned in the work session, I would really like if that could fit.
Well, I think we have to schedule a second read pretty soon. I think it's just pending the timing of what they're.
The bid's good for 90 days.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it is coming
less of
soon.
Less of a second read in action, but potentially a second read like this of just review.
So, can I make a statement? This was approved with a safety grant, and so it's really important that right now it's scheduled for first read tonight, and that it goes to the work session for second read and final approval, because there's a deadline for use of these funds by the end of April, and so as soon as we hit the go-ahead, we have to get this system in place and in order to use that funding, or we're gonna be out the funding.
Okay, so I've kind of jotted down a couple of the questions that we've asked tonight, and I'm happy to send those to Dr. Yearwood, and then he can forward them to you. And then, so I guess if anyone else has a question that has not been answered tonight, can you filter it to Dr. Yearwood, or? Okay, if you have a quick, go ahead.
It talked about, in the case of emergency, like you said, it will let us know who's in the building. It also talked about keeping track of students who signed out early, dismissed for the day. Is that something that we're going to be utilizing the system for? Okay.
No, not yet. It does have that, like if
It
we
has that
wanted to
feature.
discuss that down the road, but I think our first step is just to
Okay.
use it for the compliance pieces.
That's fine.
of visitor and volunteer.
All right.
Yeah.
I just wondered.
Yeah, no, we saw that.
Okay, thank you. If anyone comes up with an additional question between now and the work session, just send it to Dr. Yearwood, and we will plan on having the second read and approval at the work session. Thank you. Okay, we have one more item of business. It is the consideration of the construction agreements, engagements, and change orders. There are 6 of them. Is there a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I think Blake got it. Blake got it. All right. Are there any questions about any of these items? Okay, we will vote now. Roll call vote. Mike's on, please.
Okay. Mr. Lyman,
Yes.
Ms. Farrow,
Yes.
Mr. Willoughby,
Yes.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. Snodgrass,
Yes.
and Ms. Waters.
Yes. Okay, we have nothing else to do except board announcements. Mr. Willoughby's on the radio tomorrow at 8:30. He is also the board responder for the month. Mr. Willoughby?
Yeah, if I could just say this as a little birthday gift to me for Saturday. Most of the time I say this and I forgot back in February, and so it's kind of a twofer here. I just wanted to recognize and remind us around the fact that this last month in February was Black History Month, and this month is Women's History Month. And just as a reminder, right, the reason why we do these recognitions nationally and locally is to remind us of the achievements of Black Americans and women throughout the years and our culture and society, and why it is important to study their work and the important moments they were a part of in our history.
Thank you. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, sorry. Can I
I'm
make
sorry,
one
Jean.
more announcement, which is just a reminder to the public that the April 2nd is an election, and we know that our public cares about the schools, and to consider going out and making your voice heard.
Thank you. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, blaze your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Too late. We're adjourned at 10:21.